Big 12 today with Ari and James. Monday through Friday, 8 to 11 Eastern Time. Your home for all things Big 12.
And away we go on a Wednesday. Happiness is a choice. Thank you for choosing us along with James Westling. I am Ari Temkin. This is actually, yeah, it is Wednesday. It is Wednesday today, July 1st. We're officially now 1 month removed from the start of the college football season. We are now in the month of media days, James. It's heating up.
I don't know if you know this, but we are 9 college football Saturdays away from an actual college football Saturday. So I guess it would just be regular Saturdays, but then college football Saturdays are going to be here just 9 Saturdays away.
I'm well aware of that. In fact, we've kind of used this week to ask some pressing Big 12 related college football questions, and we started on Monday. You added to it Tuesday, and I figured, hey, Moss Modelo, Moss questions on a Wednesday.
Let's keep this train rolling. Why not?
Let's exercise our creative muscles and figure out other categories that we could zero in on as we talk through the Big 12. Plus, we've got a lot to get to today. This will be the culmination of the consensus on today's show. It is going to be fire emoji, fire emoji, fire emoji today. So we are arguing Texas Tech at 2 or BYU at 2. We've made our way all the way from 16 to number 2. And we settled on Houston at 3 yesterday, Kansas State at 4, Utah at 5. That's the top 5. Now we're just trying to figure out where BYU and Texas Tech factor into this. You and I had one consensus pick in the polls that we put together individually. That was Houston at 3. You had Texas Tech 1, BYU 2. I have BYU 1, Texas Tech 2. We'll come to a consensus today.
So I have an idea, and if you like it, we can run with it. If you don't, you can just go ahead and throw it back. But today, I'm making the case that BYU should be 2, as you are for Texas Tech. So tomorrow, do we flip it around, and I make the case that Texas Tech should be 1, and you make the case that BYU should be 1?
So instead of coming to the consensus today, let's save it.
Well, I think
both arguments.
By default, we will come to a consensus today. But I see today as more the case, at least from my side, for why BYU should be 2 and not 1. And so I think it would be good for you to have the platform to make the case that BYU should be the preseason favorite and I Texas Tech.
Oh, I like that. That's good. Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Creativity is king.
Not the best idea you've ever had, but not the worst either.
Every once in a while, you get a hit.
All right, Moss Modelo, Moss questions. That's where we've taken this 9 Saturdays until the start of college football. So I've come up with additional questions to ask. One major upset, single best portal edition, most excited to watch this freshman, most surprising offense, most surprising defense. All right, let's start with one major upset.
Yeah, so my number one upset, I highlight 2 games, and they involve Big 12 teams in the non-conference. And really, even 3, my outlier would be Oklahoma State against Oregon. But my top 2, BYU hosting Notre Dame. Now, the more I look at Notre Dame, that is going to be a tall order for BYU. They return 72% of their overall production. The Fighting Irish have a top 20 offense in returning production even after losing their top 2 running backs to the NFL, but they return 77% of their snaps on defense. Guys just don't leave Notre Dame. And an old friend alert, they've added former Colorado cornerback DJ McKinney, who's going to be like their top lockdown corner this year, which could spell problems for BYU because, as we'll get into later, the receivers are a huge question mark. But the other game that I highlight, I think Arizona State can go on the road and take down Texas A&M. Texas A&M loses a ton. They bring back Marcel Reed, and they bring back their top 2 receivers. But remember, they started 11-0 last year, first time since 1992. Then they gave up a 17-0 third quarter run, if you will, against Texas, and then only scored 3 points in the college football playoff in the first round against Miami. I think some of that may have had to do with the fact that Colin Klein had already accepted the Kansas State job, so they've lost their offensive coordinator, Colin Klein. They've lost their top defensive assistant in Jordan Peterson, who follows Klein to K-State, and their defensive coordinator moved on. So they are very much, from a coaching perspective, going to be a work in progress. And the other like asterisks I would add for Arizona State, if Cutter Boley is their quarterback, Ari, Cutter Boley played in the SEC. He's used to going on the road in 100,000 seat capacity stadiums. He's not going to be rattled by that home crowd like Arizona State was the last time they had a marquee non-conference game at Mississippi State.
That's a good one, but you missed the one that I am picking here, and that is Oklahoma State over Oregon.
You're going for it. Okay.
Go big or go home, right? I mean, the question here is one major upset. You come with BYU, Notre Dame. Come on, is that even an upset? Would that even be an upset?
Arizona State at Texas A&M. They're going to be a 2-touchdown underdog.
For Oregon, this is week 2. You've got brand new offensive and defensive coordinators. Remember, they lost both Will Stein, who's the head coach now at Kentucky, and Tosh Lupoi, who's now the head coach at Cal. And I mean, I think defensively, this is still the same defensive line that got after Texas Tech in the Orange Bowl. But the fact that you've got a new defensive play caller in Chris Hampton, week 2, against an offense that isn't going to be slow paced, that is not going to sit back in the pocket and pick you apart, that is way more fast paced, up tempo, get rid of the football early. I think it's going to neutralize that pass rush. And Oregon on the other side is replacing 3 offensive linemen. They lost a ton, obviously, and I'm not sure that they've replenished it enough, especially like wide receivers. Interesting. Evan Stewart, who was at one point a 5-star and hasn't really lived up to the billing, was injured all last year. He's back, but they've lost some of their other pass catchers. Kenyon Sadiq is gone. Dylan Thieneman is gone. Some of their top players are gone. So, and then, again, you've got kind of a Oklahoma State team that people are excited to see, but not really sure about. And it's at home. So I think you've got the stadium's going to be lit for the first time in a long time. Give me Oklahoma State to knock off Oregon as my one major upset.
I'm here for it. And I'm looking at Oregon's like road games that they've played. They haven't played a true non-conference road game in a long time. Their early season September road game last year was Northwestern. And then probably their marquee win on their regular season resume was a win at Penn State before Penn State completely fell apart. The year before that, their road games in the non-conference were at Oregon State, and then they opened up Big Ten play at UCLA and at Purdue. Like, environment-wise, this will be the toughest environment that Oregon has played in since they went to Texas Tech back in 2023. And that was pre-NIL Texas Tech. That was 7-5 Texas Tech. And Oregon won that game, but it was close. It was 38-30. So that tells me that, trend-wise, Oklahoma State can absolutely hang.
We are getting drunk on the upcoming football season here. Moss Modelo, Moss Questions, with 9 Saturdays left until the college football Saturdays begin. So we're asking important pressing questions. We've been doing that in the first segment all week. All right, single best portal edition.
Man, I look at the quarterback position because there are so many portal quarterbacks in this league. Drew Mestemaker's an obvious choice. But I would say like the single biggest swing portal addition is DJ Lagway at Baylor, former number 1 overall recruit in the 2023 class, spends 2 years at Florida. Awesome as a freshman, complete disaster last year. And Baylor's replacing 14 of their 22 projected starters with portal guys. So like chemistry-wise, there's a long way to go in Waco. But Lagway has all the tools, and for Baylor and Dave Aranda to be back in 2027-28, Lagway is going to have to be a monster. The potential is there, but will it all come together?
Yeah, and I thought about for this question going with one of the quarterbacks, but instead I sort of viewed this as like, who's the missing piece for a team? And that's why the single best portal edition, in my opinion, is Paki Finau, the BYU offensive tackle who transferred from Washington, because this is going to be a very good offensive line, but not if Paki Finau does not hold down that left tackle spot. He's 6'5", 310 pounds. He had 426 offensive snaps at Washington with 10 total pressures, 0 sacks, and 1 quarterback hit. Now he's moving from right to left tackle, but I mean, I don't think there's any questions about his ability to do that, and they're confident in it. If he does start at left tackle, it'll be his first career start at the position. So, hopefully from a developmental standpoint that works. But Washington did not want to lose him, and they did, and he could be the single best portal addition for any team, just based on the fact that he's kind of the missing piece for BYU.
Yeah, it's funny because BYU was the next team that I thought of in terms of pieces. When it comes to the portal guys that they brought in less than a dozen transfers, but they're all plug and play. We've got to fix this position. Left tackle, right tackle, whatever it is, that's going to be key for the offensive line, protecting Bachmeier and opening up holes for LJ Martin. But then also with all the receivers they lost, I would zero in on their tight end position. Walker Lyons, the USC transfer, the Oregon transfer. They've got like a pass catching tight end and a blocking tight end, both going to wear single-digit jersey numbers, I might add, which, just ups their game that much more. You can't play tight end in a single digit and not be an absolute beast. So those are two guys I'm super pumped about as well.
All right. You're most excited to watch this freshman.
Do we get excited about offensive linemen? Because
why
if we
not? Do you not?
If we do, it used to be like 5-10 years ago, offensive linemen, freshmen did not play. But that all changed with Jordan Seaton at Colorado, because as bad as Colorado's offensive line was, he was the only consistent piece. And there's two really good ones in the Big 12. Kelvin Obot at Utah is the highest rated signee that Utah's ever had. He's expected to be a starting tackle protecting Devin Dampier. That's a massive assignment. Felix Ojo at Texas Tech. And then I want to see what Houston does with Keyshawn Henderson. And I know I've given you like a billion names, but Keyshawn Henderson is so good, he's going to be on the field one way or another, even if it's in just like short yardage Wildcat stuff. But I just want to see how electric he is.
Those are good ones. And I thought about Obot or Ojo. I also thought about LaDainian Guyton at Texas Tech. There's a 4-star wide receiver for Texas Tech, Chase Campbell, no relation to Cody, 6'1", 180 pounds. He's another guy that I'm anxious to see. But ultimately, I went with Matt Sieg, the athlete safety coming in for West Virginia, 4-star, 5'11 and a half, 190 pounds, in a world in which safeties are used at multiple levels of a defense right now. When you think about like a Dylan Thieneman, you think about a Caleb Downs, and just looking at how the NFL uses safeties. Kyle Hamilton with the Ravens, formerly Notre Dame, right? Like the way in which these guys are used, I'm excited to see how West Virginia uses their newest chess piece in Sieg, who I think should come in and have an immediate impact. So I am most excited to watch the highest rated recruit that West Virginia's had in Matt Sieg from McDonald, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and remember, he was a late flip from Penn State. Once Penn State hired Matt Campbell, Sieg committed to West Virginia because of all the guys that Iowa State was bringing with them from their secondary. He wanted to play right away. He's going to play right away. And even with like all the transfer portal depth that West Virginia's added in the secondary, he is still a projected starter, which tells you just how athletic and how gifted he is.
All right, we are working our way through some questions here, pressing questions on the precipice of the college football season. Two more, and that would be, who do you think will have the most surprising offense?
Yeah, so Oklahoma State won't be a surprise, right? They're the flashy pick right now to have a major breakthrough. I would lean Kansas State. I think everybody looks at that 6-6 season. They look at the 2 or 3 plays that really cost them games offensively. But with Joe Jackson and that whole running back by committee with Rodney Fields and Jay Harris, and I just think Avery Johnson, like this is the year that Avery's going to be unlocked in this Colin Klein offense. It's not going to be super, air raid, up tempo. It's still going to be a ball control huddle offense like K-State ran back when Colin Klein was the quarterback for Bill Snyder. But in terms of like points and yards per play, I think K-State's going to have a massive year offensively.
I think I'm going with the team that you've been very high on this entire offseason. I think the most surprising offense will be West Virginia's. The profile fits here. Rick Trickett is back. They're extremely excited about what they have on their offensive line. There was another, 4 or 5-star late flip from Penn State that should man their offensive line this year. Expectations are fairly low for West Virginia, and I think they've got the right pieces to run Rich Rod's system. Especially, I think the Rick Trickett edition we've documented That's going to be huge in terms of getting their running game back in order. And then once the running game is cooking with Cam Cook, now you enter in a Michael Hawkins or a Scotty Fox, dual threat guys that are capable of running and being successful within this Rich Rod offense. So the pieces fit, the pieces are there. This should be an explosive offense, which is not something that anybody expects. How about the most surprising defense?
Yeah, there's two teams that come to mind. Number one is Colorado. I think Colorado has arguably the most underrated portal class defensively in the league, headed by Gideon ESPN Lamprin, the linebacker from Bowling Green, who I saw in person is just an absolute beast, like one of the hardest workers you'll ever see. He's got a lot of Jacob Rodriguez to him. But I would go Arizona State. Like Arizona State on paper only returns 2 starters, but they return their number 1 defensive player in CJ Fight, second team all Big 12, chose to come back instead of enter the NFL draft. So that's a great starting point, right? And then they return Adrian Boogie Wilson, who's the team's leading returning tackler in the secondary. So they've got 2 really key pieces back in terms of where they play, your best corner and your best defensive lineman. But then they add Rodney Bamaj Jr., who was expected to be a starter last year, but only played in 7 games because he got hurt midway through the year. And they bring in the nation's leading tackler in Owen Long from Colorado State. He had 151 stops. Like, he is going to be an immediate signal caller of the linebacking core. And schematically, I feel like Arizona State always plays above their talent level defensively, but talent-wise on paper, I see a lot to like for the Sun Devils.
I'm going with the team that you mentioned. I'm going with Colorado here. Leona Lafau, the linebacker addition. I think the addition of Chris Marv as the defensive coordinator is a guy that has made his, career out of developing linebackers and defensive linemen. That will help to fix what was the 135th nationally ranked rush defense last year with 222.5 yards per game. I think defense was really good for Colorado 2 years ago. They took a dive off a cliff last year, fired their defensive coordinator, and then hired Chris Marv, who I think is the right hire in the right spot. I'm really excited to see Colorado's defense this year. I think they're going to surprise some teams.
Yeah,
and again, I'm very high on Colorado overall this year.
And I like that pick because I think last year, I think the defense was hampered by how bad the offense was. The defense was on the field a ton. And 2 years ago, that wasn't the case. Like 2 years ago, offensively, they're making enough plays that the defense didn't have to be out there as much. And a weird offseason with Robert Livingston, like leaving to go to the NFL and be an assistant, and then Warren Sapp departing defensively. Like a lot of these NFL Hall of Famers that were on Deion's staff are no longer there. But Champ Bailey is still kind of consulting with that defense. I think he's going to help the secondary. So I like that pick a lot.
All right, that's James Westling. I'm Ari Temkin. Glad we got that out of the way. Very important work this morning here. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. On the way next, Phil Steele has the Big 12 ranked where, and an incredible article about Kalani Sitake and a profile about him that shows what's different at BYU. That's next. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. Along with James Westling, I'm Ari Temkin. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. You can always get in touch with us on social at Ari Sports, ARI Sports. James is at James Westling as well on Instagram or on X. James, USA Today's John Bryce had a really good profile on Kalani Sitake, and I think it completely nails what makes him different. I mean, he's flying coach, he's chatting up strangers, he's taking notes from a grandmother in the middle seat because he thinks everyone has something to teach him. And if you've ever spent any, more than 5 minutes with Kalani Sitake, you'd know that that's 100% true and accurate. He is genuine, friendly, he's down to earth, he's just a real dude who also happens to be an elite football coach, and it's probably the elite dude that makes him a great football coach.
A gentle giant. And to win 12 games last year with a true freshman quarterback, first time that had happened at BYU in 25 years, is remarkable. And I think this profile does a really nice job of kind of leaning into who he is as a person, but also a peek behind the curtain as to how he runs his program. Because it's clear that they're exceeding, I would say, not only their talent level, but maybe even expectations outside of Provo. And then I also think there's this narrative that BYU players, they all serve a 2-year mission, and so they're all older. They've got a roster full of 25, 26-year-old kids. That's no longer the case. LJ Martin is not LDS. LJ Martin is a fifth-year senior running back who's like 22. Bear Bachmeier is a 19-year-old true sophomore quarterback. So they're doing this in this new era in a way that, sure, they lean into the family culture and the LDS roots, and they have NIL, but it's much more than that. And that's what I appreciate about this piece, is highlighting just how much they've stepped up their game financially, but also, and when I say financially, I mean to keep Kalani Sitake in Provo, because we know that Penn State offered him a boatload. But can they break through and become an elite program that is winning games in the college football playoff, which is why I think that Notre Dame game is just so massive for the Big 12 and for the program as a have we arrived moment.
Yeah, and I mean, you just laid it out there. Like, this piece also takes us behind the curtain, not just in how he runs his program, but what happened in the Penn State pursuit and just the legitimacy of it. Here's the money quote that Bryce gets from Kalani. He says, quote, "I want to be more transformational than transactional. We won't be the top bidder. That will never happen," end quote. Right. First, the irony. So he turned down the highest bidder in Penn State to stay somewhere that admits it'll never be one. So how did BYU actually keep Sitake? Well, not by outspending Penn State, clearly. I think it's obvious through the piece, James, that they offered something that Penn State couldn't have offered. But Sitake already knew that, right? I mean, Sitake already knew what BYU could offer that Penn State couldn't. So why did he still pursue it? And I think it was quite genuinely because he needed to bring together the donor base and Crumble Cookies, Jason McGowan, getting fans to react. Basically, ultimately, what kept him there was, one, the secret sauce of BYU, which is something that you can never redo at Penn State. And number two is coaching salaries, NIL investment, not a personal bidding war for Sitake himself.
Well, and I think also the fact that BYU is essentially home for Kalani Sitake. He's coached and played at either BYU or Utah his entire life. And there's no better guy to run that program than a guy who was born and raised in that environment. And the article kind of notes the outlier problem with lack of NFL talent. Remember, 3 years ago they had, or maybe it was even longer than that, with Zach Wilson at quarterback, they had those 10-11 win teams when they were still an independent, and it was all centered around his play. They were explosive. He was an incredible college quarterback. Well, now, can they start to churn out more NFL caliber talent? 2 players drafted in 2026 coming off a 12-win season and an 85+% win rate over the last 2 years. At some point, scheme and culture hit a ceiling against elite rosters. And we saw that when BYU played Texas Tech. So we know they're built for Big 12 success, but are they built for college football playoff success is the next step. And they do have, now when you look at their recruiting pedigree, because the last 2 years, their recruiting classes have been the best ever at BYU. And the transfers that they brought in are all former 4 or 5-star guys. So now they do have some elite talent. Maybe not at the quarterback position, although Bachmeier's very good. Maybe not at receiver, but when it comes to like some of these other plug-and-play transfers, the elite talent is there.
Yeah, and I mean, James, you hit on this earlier. We talked about the Washington tackle that they added, Paki Finau, and I mean that's to me where the rubber meets the road here on this conversation. That you have 9 additions, 9, 10, was it 10, 9 additions? Every one of them is expected to be a starter or a major contributor. This isn't a volume play like it is at many other places that needed volume play. And then, you and I have talked a lot about the net portal metrics. So not necessarily how the gross numbers of who you bring in, but it's sort of a combination of what kind of impact are the players that you're bringing in going to have? Are you bringing in starters at the Power 5 level? Or are you bringing in, guys that played limited snaps to the group of 5? And then who do you lose? And when you look at sort of the net value of what BYU has done this offseason, it's the cleanest example of this. They've added players that are going to be immediate impact starters or major contributors, and they didn't lose anybody of that ilk. The guys they lost to the portal were guys that didn't play and weren't going to factor.
So the top 3 classes in the Big 12 in the net transfer portal rankings, Texas Tech number 1, Houston number 2, and BYU number 3. They lost 13 guys. They brought in 9. But the 13 guys that they lost were backups looking for bigger, better opportunities to play. The 9 guys that they brought in are all graded very high. I also think it says a lot that they lose their defensive coordinator, Jay Hill, who has really been kind of perceived as the architect of that defense. But they didn't lose a lot of transfers. Not a ton of guys from BYU went with him. So that tells me that this is very much a program that is culture-driven, and that the players want to be there. They enjoy Provo, Utah. They love playing for Coach Sataki and all the behind-the-scenes stuff that you see. And now BYU is starting to, I think the national narrative, Big 12 reality versus perception, is that BYU's for real. I've seen them way higher than ever before when it comes to preseason polls because they've done it now back-to-back years.
Yeah, let's return to that money quote again from Sataki. Quote, "We're not really focused on money. Although we have an opportunity to pay the players, and we won't be the top bidder. That will never happen." So I think you just hit there on the secret sauce. And I mean, think about it from this perspective. Aaron Roderick is back as the offensive coordinator. Jay Hill is gone. He leaves with Kyle Whittingham to go to Michigan. But there was no external search, right? I mean, they didn't interview a bunch of candidates. They immediately pivoted. Kelly Papinga, who'd been on staff for a long time, he played at BYU, right? This is, I mean, it's actually quite amazing that they almost lost their head coach and instead return him and have even more continuity than they had before somehow. Right. And I'm supposed to believe this Taki was ever leaving?
Yeah, no, total smokescreen. And Aaron Roderick is, I think, their hidden weapon. This is an offense that on paper, it's not super flashy. They don't have a ton of explosive plays, but all they do is score points. Okay, in 4 of the last 5 seasons, they've averaged more than 31 points per game. And last year, I thought the play calling and the direction of the offense got more and more advanced the deeper we got into the season. Whereas mid to late November, they're running that tornado drill offense where they're spinning around and handing the ball off. It was one of the coolest plays I've ever seen in college football. I think it was in the Colorado game. So it has me excited about the potential this year. But again, are these wide receivers ready? Because if you're going to have a down the field passing attack with verticality, you've got to have receivers running the right routes. You've got to have receivers locked in from a blocking perspective. So there's a lot to potential-wise, but can it all come together?
Yeah, and Sataki's will never be the top bidder line lands hard because of the assumption that money and winning move in a straight line. Oh, and by the way, BYU has the money to outbid anybody, but that's just not the type of player that they're after. And what I think is really cool about this profile from John Bryce, the USA Today, is that the roster retention story and the coaching retention story are the same story told twice. It's the same story. Transformational, not transactional, isn't a talking point at BYU.
Yeah.
It is an operating model.
Well, and for the guys, the type of player that Kalani Sitake wants in his program, money isn't everything. And so, sure, they're never going to be the highest bidder, but they can get pretty dang close. If, as a human, you're in a job and you're making good money and you really like that job, the risk reward very much outweighs staying with your current employer versus somebody unproven that's maybe offering you a little bit more money, but you have no idea what you're walking into. And that's why Bear Bachmeier's back at quarterback. Sure, he could have made probably $4 or $5 million somewhere else in the country. But let's say BYU's paying him 2 or 3. I'm just throwing out a total speculation number. That's not worth the risk of leaving. And I think that's kind of how they keep these guys. And there's, like I said, man, there's a lot to like about this team.
Yeah, no, and I think in many ways, James, it's representative of the Big 12, right? I mean,
Yep.
the Big 12 collectively is a bunch of schools similar to BYU in that fashion. We've heard we're not going to outbid other programs in an NIL war from basically every other coach. The only program we know that that's not the case for would be Texas Tech. That's the outlier here. But everybody else, all 15 other schools, are very much in line with the BYU way of thinking. The difference here is though the BYU actually has the money to outbid and therefore can keep their coach and coaching staff in place, which helps to usher in that continuity.
And I think the other like bright spot to lean into that is that we have a recent sample of success at the highest level where that methodology works with Indiana. Indiana was not the highest bidder at any position, but they were able to get close, right? Like a lot of these Big 12 schools, if you can get close with experience and roster retention, you can be a player. You can be a national championship caliber team. So absolutely, I think that's a great narrative for the league.
It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, along with James Westling. I am Ari Temkin. We are presented by Modelo. A reminder, we've got the consensus coming up where we are trying to figure out who number 1 and number 2 are in the Big 12 as we head into media days on Tuesday and Wednesday from Frisco. On the way next, though, let's talk a little bit about the future of conferences, especially in light of this latest legislation. John Kurtz joins us from the host from the Open for Business podcast. That's next. This is Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio.
Gilkey off the hands of Record and intercepted. Genesis Smith, the safety, inside the 15.
Sorsby was. He throws. It's Cyrus Allen, and they rally to swing him down. Genesis Smith with great speed to the perimeter. Nice catch. Up, it's on the ground, it's fumbled, picked up by Arizona, and going the other way inside the 5-yard line, Genesis Smith.
Along with James Westling, I am Ari Temkin. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. All right, let's talk about a upcoming realignment wave, because that is the topic of the college football offseason, seemingly every offseason, despite not being a huge topic this offseason. Open for Business podcast host John Kurtz is joining us here on Big 12 Radio. Talk about his latest piece, where a realignment wave could be coming soon, thanks to the latest bill, the Protect College Sports Act. John, how are you?
What's going on, Ari? James, good to talk to you guys.
So, yeah, let's start right there. What does the Protect College Sports Act mean for the future of realignment?
Yeah, it's sparked this conversation lately here because the thought is, hey, if this is actually going to freeze membership of the Power Four conferences, which as of right now, as of where the bill stands after markup, that's what would happen. It was already going to freeze membership in the SEC and the Big Ten. They were not thrilled with that, as you might imagine, just being singled out. So now the bar has been lowered to include the Big 12 and the ACC, which still didn't get support from the SEC and Big Ten ultimately for the bill, but that has happened. And so you're looking now at a landscape where, okay, if that is actually going to turn into law, if there is any kind of a window where it's not going to be law yet, but will soon, I think the thought that is now taking over a lot of corners of the college football internet is like, well, hey, wouldn't there be a rush of teams to try and get their ticket to the Power Two, or even if you're thinking like, I know nobody seems to think much of the group of six anymore, but the poor group of six schools, if you're like a Boise or you're a South Florida or you're Memphis, that's been trying to make it up into the Power Four ranks, you're going to be like, this is our last shot. We've got to pull out all the stops and do whatever we can. And, I think to me, the most interesting part of it overall is the ACC, because we saw Florida State a couple of years ago desperate enough to get out that they sued their own conference. They were pulling up nepotism allegations against the former commissioner of the conference. Like, not only were they willing to fight, but they were fighting pretty dirty to try and get out of the ACC. So the cost would be exorbitant. I know John Wilner from the San Jose Mercury News was talking about this past week that it would be like $950 million to get out, which obviously seems wild. But if it is your last shot before a bill goes into law that is going to literally prevent that from happening, I understand why people are saying, hey, this could be just like a mad dash and a mad scramble. And that even trickles down to the Big 12, obviously, when you think about, it seems like a lot of Utah fans have had their sights set on the Big 10, and certainly I understand why. If that is your thought, or if you're a Texas Tech fan that right now is upset with Big 12 leadership because of a string of things that have happened over the last 365 days, it may not be your favorite thing in the world to think about being stuck more or less in the Big 12 also. So that's kind of the theory behind it. We'll see what happens. A part of this is, one, obviously the bill's got to pass. And then two, I don't know what it would be like. Does it happen immediately? Is there some sort of grace period? You would think that there would be forethought into this by the lawmakers and everybody that is handling this, but
would you think
who knows? Who knows?
Would you think that, though?
Well, that's a fair point, Ari. You would like to think. How about I amend it to say you would like to think, but who knows?
So, John, let's play hypotheticals. If the Protect College Sports Act is passed, what's in there in terms of the window for conference realignment? And does this essentially lock in these conferences as they are now from whenever that date or whenever that bill goes into effect until when? Until the end of time?
It's a really good question. That's a really good question. I will admit to you that, it's like 116 pages now at this point. Because
you've read all of them, right?
I have not. I have not done my homework on that. Don't tell my college professors that I wasn't willing to read again. If someone has the Spark Notes of it, but yeah, right now the way everybody is talking about it and reacting to it, the SEC and Big Ten have certainly had such an adverse reaction to it that it seems like they believe that there is legitimate teeth to it. For what period of time, technically, I don't know. And then, the other thing is that you have to think about with all this that everybody always points out is like, what will the legal challenges be to it if it were to become law? Because, Yeah, that's what happens with everything these days. Billable hours are the only thing undefeated in college sports these days. And I'm sure there would be legal challenges to different aspects of this from somewhere. There's also the thought that, hey, just the mere fact that we're here and it is dangerous enough to the SEC and Big Ten that it could become law, that they may just say, well, now's the time before this actually happens. We'll just break off and do our own thing, right? I mean, there are a bunch of different possibilities here, and we're working on a really condensed timeline, because the thought is in July, the Senate could potentially vote on this. Then it would go to the House, and I think like an optimistic timeline there sounds like maybe like September for them to be talking about voting on it potentially if it is going to happen. And so, I mean, that's not very far away. It's July 1st today. So there's a lot of craziness that could be happening in a short period of time, all the while you're trying to get ready for a season. So I would just say hang on and keep your head on a swivel, my friends.
Yeah. So I'm surprised the bill has made it this far. It's further now than any previous bill before it. What is the likelihood that this bill actually gets passed, in your opinion?
Yeah, this is where I definitely defer to the experts on this, because like I do not have the political acumen to really be like properly assessing that. But that's, again, covering college sports today. It's like you got to dabble in law, you got to dabble in politics. Like, it's crazy. But I can tell you, I heard Ross Dellinger from Yahoo Sports, who is as connected as anybody on this, and certainly as connected as anybody in college sports right now doing the reporting. He said on the last College Football Inquirer podcast, and this was like post the bill being marked up and some of the changes being made, he said he was getting the feel now that 50-50 seemed about right. And that is what Charlie Baker, the president of the NCAA, said at the outset of all this, that he thought there was a 50-50 shot. Josh Pate, who I know is another pretty connected guy, one of the biggest voices in college football. I mean, he's been saying since the beginning of this, he feels like that it will pass comfortably, I believe was his word on that. So there are a couple people that definitely think that. I mentioned John Wilner earlier. I read him. He called it a double-digit underdog to actually pass. So there are a lot of people that are really pessimistic about it, but you do have some, including, Dellinger's the one that I really pay attention to the most there, because he's talking to everybody. And he thinks that it's at least got a 50-50 shot. I will just say the other thing, too, to observe from this is, I mean, the fact that the SEC and Big Ten have come out with multiple statements about this, that they have met with the senators involved, shows that they understand that there is a real chance of this happening. Because in the past, when things like this have come to the forefront, or there have been like Super League proposals from like Smash Capital, some of these, Project Rudy, when they first started to surface, I mean, the SEC and Big Ten, they didn't show up for any of the meetings. They didn't really publicly address it. They just kind of shrugged. But this is getting much more of a reaction from them. Like, okay, this is something that could actually happen.
Yeah, I mean, 50-50, those odds are way higher than anything else we've ever seen. So if this does pass, like, John, do you think this really will, I guess, level the playing field in a lot of ways?
It's such a tough question. I have been encouraged by it throughout the entire process, because as a Big 12 fan, like, I have at least seen throughout this, Senators Cruz and Cantwell, who are the two, it's a bipartisan group that has brought this to the table. I mean, they have stood toe to toe with the SEC and Big Ten at like every turn, and outside of a couple concessions, I mean, they have really been pretty stern about this and saying like, hey, we are not getting rid of what they would call, kind of like the Super League portion of this, where they're trying to prevent the SEC and Big Ten from expanding or merging. Like, we're not backing off that. We're not backing off the potential pooling of broadcast rights, which is another huge thing the SEC and Big Ten do not want, because if that were to ever happen, everybody would make more money in the aggregate, but the gap would likely close a little bit between the SEC and Big Ten and everybody else. So just the mere fact that you've had somebody finally standing up to the SEC and Big Ten, who have just had carte blanche to make every decision in college athletics for the last 5 years, basically, has been really encouraging for me to see. So it's hard for me not to get on board with this. But I do think you have to consider there are a lot of ways that this could go. I mean, a part of this bill is to really crack down on outside NIL. So any money being paid to the student athletes outside of what would be revenue sharing. And if that were to happen and everybody is operating on more or less the same cap, then you're going back almost, I would think you go back almost to the old way of recruiting, where like 10 years ago, if everybody is operating with the same amount of money, the same resources to throw at somebody, you can't just outspend for a quarterback that you want. Well, where are people going to go? Players are going to go to places with great coaches, great tradition, facilities, like all that stuff starts to come back into play again. If there's not just this, you can't just money whip somebody, which is why it's been interesting to me that, I mean, Cody Campbell is Texas Tech mega booster, chairman of the board over there at Texas Tech, and he has his fingerprints all over this. I think it's had a lot of influence on what the Protect College Sports Act is. So, maybe some of that is just it's unsustainable for anybody to continue to up the prices like rosters have continued to go up and up here. But that would be, you look at, well, what are the schools that have had the advantage of using money to get prospects that they may not otherwise have gotten? I mean, Texas Tech is close to the top of that list. So I think it would be in the best interest of everybody long term, because it just curbs some of the insanity, both in spending and the one-time transfer rule. I think would be huge, like in terms of maintaining fan interest, because I think fans struggle so much right now with like, I got to learn a new roster every year. There's never any security that any kid is going to stick around. If you have just a rule where like, hey, you get one free transfer, and then after that, it's going to have to take a special circumstance like a coaching change, or something really out of the ordinary, you would have more continuity with your rosters. So I think for the big picture of college sports, I think it does make a lot of sense if these work as intended, because right now it feels like it's just everything's flying off the rails, and at some point it's going to be too late to put the toothpaste back in the tube, and this could be bad for everybody. But then the other problem is, legal challenges, and will there be unintended consequences that we're not even thinking about right now? Because throughout the history of time in college sports, people will find ways to circumvent and bend the rules, and there will be things that happen, and you're going to have to respond and react to that as it goes. So we'll see.
John Kurtz, go check out the work that John does in the Open for Business podcast and newsletter. Appreciate your time, John. Be well, man. Thank you.
Hey, James, Ari, great to talk to you. Take care.
Yeah,
See you, John.
Well. John Kurtz joining us here. I don't know. I'm still extremely pessimistic about not just the passing of it, but even if it does pass, what happens to some of these specifics. Like, I just don't know that you can limit the free trade in the way that this bill attempts to, especially when it comes to conference realignment. Right? Like if in a capitalist society you can go somewhere else that you can make more money and have better lot, like that's kind of how this works. So to limit that, like I understand the spirit of it, and I'm not disagreeing with the spirit of it, but I'm, let's just say, pessimistic at best that part of this bill will hold up over time, even if the bill passes.
Yeah, and if it does, I think John's onto something where it could be a mad scramble for the Big Ten and the SEC to expand in that very short window, because there's a very key 75% rule when it comes to this act. And that 75% rule is the media rights and the conferences in college football pooling the media rights. Well, that can only be triggered if 75% of the schools in the FBS agree to participate. 75%. Currently, the Big Ten and the SEC account for 24.6% of the 138 FBS programs. So just under, like right on that 75% cut line. If they add a couple more schools, all of a sudden, then they're above that 25% threshold that they would need to prevent the pooling of media rights.
It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. It is a Wednesday, which means it's time to power rank, and we are power ranking the top 5 teams in the 2025-2026 calendar sports year out of the Big 12. It's Big 12 today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Shaw takes the handoff. He's clutched on the three. Gunnar Maldonado from the safety level. Second down and 9. Salter.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios, along with James Westling. I'm Ari Temkin. All right, and it is time to power rank. Remember, James, on Power Ranking Wednesdays, we power rank because that's what we do in this world. It's not good enough to just have things. We have to power rank them accordingly. And so on Wednesdays, we power rank. It's just that simple. You know, on Wednesdays, we put our pants on one leg at a time, although we're remote throughout the summer. So I don't have to put on pants anymore. But if we did theoretically put on pants to do the show, well, then once we put our pants on, we power rank on a Wednesday. And that's what we're doing. A few weeks ago, we put a cap on, we wrapped a bow around the 2025-2026 Big 12 calendar sports year. And so now let's power rank the top 5 teams from the Big 12 2025-2026 season overall. Shall we?
Number 5.
James?
Well, I haven't worn pants in a month. Now, did you do specific sport like Arizona men's basketball, or are you doing more all sports collectively?
Taman, do you want to repeat the rules to James here in case there's any confusion?
Yeah,
All sports during the 25-26 year. All sports.
James, I
caught
know
that.
I know you're
I caught
easily
that.
confused, but
I'm dialed in. All right, number 5 for me is Arizona. Okay, Arizona goes 36-3
just Arizona.
in men's basketball. I'm going all sports combined. Okay, Arizona number 5, and it starts with men's basketball. Football, they go 9-4, had a massive bounce back year under Brent Brennan after they go 4-8 the year before. But really for Arizona, the highlight is that 23-0 start in men's basketball. They beat Florida to open the season, beat UCLA and UConn and Alabama, and making their Final Four for the first time since 2001. Even though it ended with a sour taste in our mouth, it was still an incredible year. So I'm going collective, Arizona number 5.
Taman, is that okay within the rules?
I don't particularly like it, but I'll allow it.
Yeah. I'm
offended.
you.
I'm offended by you not liking it.
You
and
should be offended because the rules were of all sports, and Arizona men's basketball and Arizona football, those are different sports.
Yeah, that counts
Okay.
as two different numbers here.
I'm going
that.
I'm going the Collectors Cup. Okay, the James Westling Collectors Cup, the Cup of Champions. I'm going all sports, top 5 programs.
I'm not cheating. I'm going to name individual programs that we should be talking about here. And number 5 for me is Oklahoma State Wrestling. The national runner-up is a team at the NCAA championships with 3 individual national championships, including Jax Forrest at 133, Sergio Vega at 144, and Landon Robideau at 159, making Oklahoma State the first program in NCAA history with 3 freshman national champs in a single tournament. Get ready because Oklahoma State is about to win a ton of national titles in wrestling. And Jax Forrest is the name to know. Remember, Jax Forrest mid-season decided, you know what? I'm done with high school. I'm just going to go ahead and step it up and start to wrestle at college. He did that mid-year. Oh, and just won a national championship at 133. Jax Forrest is the name to know. Oklahoma State Wrestling, number 5 for me.
Number 4.
All right, number 4 for me, this is where I put TCU. Highlighted by women's basketball, 32-6, second straight Big 12 regular season title. Now, they had a little bit of a down year in baseball. They were just outside looking in for the NCAA tournament. But football to win 9 games, back-to-back seasons, and then men's basketball with Jamie Dixon getting back to the NCAA tournament. I'll put TCU at number 4.
Pretty upset that you're cheating. Would have been great to recognize all of these sports, but that's not how it works. There's 5 winners, and then the rest are losers, James. You know that. If you're watching us on Big 12 Studios, go check out big12studios.com. Anytime James is talking, I'm just shaking my head, looking very unapprovingly at James. Number 4 for me is Texas Tech softball because I'm doing specific sports. Back-to-back national runners-up, swept by Texas yet again. But despite that, an incredibly successful year, incredibly successful run. Nigeri Kennedy closed her career with a complete game effort and a clinching loss. 4 Women's College World Series semifinal appearances across 2 programs for Nyjah. This is sort of the end of an era where Nyjah became the face of college softball. In some ways, Nyjah was the Peyton Manning to Tegan Cavan's Tom Brady, if you will. Cavan won the titles, but Kennedy was the big name because of what she did for NIL and softball. Texas Tech softball bringing incredible visibility to the sport, bringing incredible excitement to Texas Tech and to Big 12 softball. Texas Tech softball, number 4 for me.
Number 3.
Our number 3 for me, my Big 12 Champions Cup, courtesy of yours truly, is Oklahoma State. Now, how much weight does a 1-11 football season carry? Well, as you noted, their wrestling program, 15-1, Big 12 team champs, and NCAA runner-up. Baseball, NCAA tournament appearance with an experienced roster. Softball, 10 straight NCAA tournament appearances, one of the most consistent programs in the country, hosted a Stillwater Regional in the opening rounds of the NCAA tournament, Oklahoma State, and then we talk about golf. We talk about everything else. We've got Oklahoma State at number 3.
Yeah, number three for me is I recognize individual sports and give them the acclaim that they so deservedly need and want and crave. TCU women's soccer. This is a program defining season for Eric Bell and his crew. First ever College Cup appearance for TCU. They beat the defending national champion North Carolina on penalties in the round of 16 after an insane goal, the equalizer late in that game. They upset number one overall seed Vanderbilt in overtime in the Elite Eight. They did fall to the eventual national champs, which, by the way, is a theme across Big 12 sports this year. Big 12 teams making it far in sports and losing to the eventual national champion. Oklahoma State wrestling finishes as a runner-up. Texas Tech softball finishes as a runner-up. TCU women's soccer loses in the College Cup, the Final Four of women's soccer, to the eventual national champion Florida State in the semis. But 18-3-2, won their fourth Big 12 title in 6 seasons, and just an incredible run for TCU women's soccer and Eric Bell's crew. They're number 3 on my list as I recognize individual sports here.
Number 2.
All right, number 2 for me is Texas Tech. Big 12 football, regular and championship, postseason titles, Women's College World Series, back-to-back Big 12 softball titles, and then Wes Kitley Boulevard, indoor and outdoor track and field champs. Men's basketball, if JT Toppin doesn't go down, they're in the Final Four. Women's basketball, 19-0 to start the season. All across the board, they were consistent. The only sport that really probably held them back was baseball. Baseball is down bad. But outside of that, Texas Tech is a juggernaut in the Big 12. Not just the Big 12, but nationally as well.
Yeah, number 2 for me is I recognize individual sports across these programs.
Wait, are you doing individual sports?
Yeah, I've decided to identify the individual sports as opposed to doing kind of the lazy program overview.
Oh, lazy, yes. That's it.
We're going to fight by the end of this segment. There's no doubt about it. It's a good thing we're not in the same studio today. Oklahoma State men's cross country is number 2 for me. This is the national champion in the Big 12, the 6th program title for Oklahoma State men's cross country. They won the 2025 NCAA championships. The 5 Cowboys inside the top 15, including Brian Musau at 4th, a team score of 57. Musau also became just the second man since 2000 to win 3 straight Big 12 individual titles. Incredible run for Oklahoma State men's cross country, as I recognize individual sports, the top 5 of them, which is a big deal to crack the top 5. Oklahoma State, despite a 1-11 football season, has 2 in my top 5 and maybe should have made room for a 3rd when it comes to golf. But yeah, I'm recognizing the individual sports themselves and not just the programs overall.
Number 1.
Well, while my opponent recognizes one individual sport at each spot, I highlight 4 or 5 different sports for each program. So I've got BYU number 1.
Everybody wins a trophy in James's world.
The participation is king and dominance is king, which BYU did. They won 12 games. They get to the Big 12 championship game in football, but also cross country. On the women's side, runner-up at the NCAA national championships, the best program finish ever. The men's cross country program finished 11th at national. They made the NCAA tournament in volleyball, in women's soccer, in men's basketball. They had the number 1 overall draft pick, plus a guy that got hurt midway through the year, Richie Saunders, drafted in the 2nd round by the Grizzlies. You look at gymnastics, swimming and diving, track and field, they all scored points nationally. So in terms of all the sports combined, I go BYU number 1.
They scored points nationally. Wow. Dynamic analysis right there, James.
Yeah, they scored points nationally in the Directors' Cup, okay?
Number 1 is Arizona men's basketball. I could have gone in a bunch of different directions here, but I think it's the most complete resume in the conference in terms of visibility, in terms of run. 36-2 outright regular season Big 12 champs. They won the Big 12 tournament championship as well. The number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament, their first Final Four since 2001. Do you need me to stop there? Just incredible. And again, in following the theme here, for teams that either won national championships or lost the eventual champion, Michigan. Michigan had 3 top 15 picks. Is that what it was? Top 15 picks for Michigan. So we might look back 5-10 years from now and think that's an all-timer, like we did when Kansas lost the Final Four to Villanova in 2018, only to find that Nova team would leave the Knicks to a NBA championship. So maybe we'll feel the same way about this Arizona team that lost to Michigan in 2026 in the Final Four. But there's your list. Arizona men's basketball, Oklahoma State men's cross country, TCU women's soccer at third, Texas Tech softball at fourth, and Oklahoma State wrestling at fifth. Could have made room for Texas Tech football on this list, but did not because they didn't make it far enough. Also could have made room for West Virginia baseball. To me, that was sixth. The West Virginia baseball would have been sixth on this list. Kansas baseball is another team that could have made a run here, winning a Big 12 championship. Probably would have had them eighth with Texas Tech football at seventh, Kansas baseball at eighth, and on, and so on and so forth. All right. On this power ranking Wednesday, we always randomly power rank something. So T-Chains, Taman Turner, what are we randomly power ranking today?
So today is the birth of Canada, the country to our North America's hat. On July 1st, 1867, they became a country. I wonder if this is their July 4th. So
yes,
I guess
it is. 3 days before
they're all off today up to the north. So you guys are gonna power rank the top 5 things about Canada that they've given to the world.
All right, top 5 things that Canada has given to the world. All right, James. So just so you recognize here, this is not North America. Don't include America and Mexico in this too. Just Canada.
Canada only. Okay. This, by the way, this might be my favorite power rankings of all time. Love me some Canada.
James, the World Cup is going on in America, but we're only talking about Canada.
Number 5 for me, Viking Row.
Yes. Okay.
Just kidding. That's Norway. All right. Number 5 for me. All right. Canada has given us, everybody's listening. Number 5 for me is elite sports aesthetics, color palettes. The Toronto Blue Jays, the baby blues. Are they royal blue? Are they baby blue? Nobody knows and nobody cares. The Toronto Raptors, give me a giant dinosaur on that jersey. And then I would throw Vince Carter into the mix because Vince Carter alone was giving us highlights, YouTube-level highlights before YouTube existed. So elite sports aesthetics. Canada doesn't miss on jerseys. They're number 5.
Number 5 for me is peanut butter, which was invented by a Canadian pharmacist in 1884, Marcellus Gilmore Edson. Apparently, this is a battle between whether it was this Canadian pharmacist in 1884 or George Washington Carver. So Canada and America are battling, and at this point, on July 1st, I'm going to give it to Canada. On July 4th, ask me again, and I'm going to give it to America. But peanut butter, it's awesome. It's fantastic. Far too many kids are allergic to it. We fed our kids peanut butter and Bomba snacks early in their life so that we could get out in front of the peanut butter allergy that so many kids are afflicted with. So peanut butter, number 5 for me.
Number 4.
Yeah, number 4 for me is oil. Canada has enough oil to keep your lawnmower and your Ford F-150 running until post-apocalypse.
I thought you were going to tell me that Canada invented oil.
Just oil, full stop. Canada exports 2 things, oil and apologies. All right, oil. It's important, but it's not as important as what's number 3 on my list.
Number 4 for me is, and this was a toughie, but I'm going to go here with the instant replay. Did you know that instant replay was invented by George Retzloff in 1955 when it was used to replay a goal during CBC's Hockey Night in Canada?
No.
You're welcome, world. Instant replay. And by the way, if you don't like instant replay in sports, which is kind of where I am, well then, way to go, Canada. Way to ruin sports.
Number 3.
Yeah, number 3 for me is just slightly more important in my life than number 4. I had oil at number 4. Number 3, it already cracked your top 5. It is peanut butter. Canada looked at bread and said, you know what? This sandwich needs glue. Peanut butter is king. They didn't just stop at peanut butter. They're putting pineapple on pizza. They have no fear when it comes to experimenting with our food palette.
Yeah, in fact, I thought of, on this July 1st, Canadian Independence Day, thought of power ranking the 5 worst things that Canada has contributed to society, including Alanis Morissette and
It's like rain.
There you go. Yep, that one. And pineapple on pizza. What number are we on here?
3.
We're on number 3. Feels like the pacemaker should probably make an appearance here. Electrical engineer John Hops from Winnipeg started experimenting with radio frequency as a body warmer, and that's when he discovered that a stopped heart could be started again mechanically or electrically. He built the world's first pacemaker. Today, around 3 million people in the world have pacemakers. 600,000 people receive pacemaker implants annually. How about that? John Hops from Winnipeg.
Number 2.
Ari, did you know James Naismith is Canadian?
I did know that. In fact, there's a good chance that James Naismith will make appearance either 1 or 2 on my list.
Okay, he checks in at number 2 on mine. Just basketball. End of sentence. That's right. James Naismith, Canada, invented basketball. And then they spent the next 100 years letting Americans be better at it. But without Canada, we've got competitive cornhole on ESPN 24/7. James Naismith is Canadian? Number 2 on my list.
I also have basketball number 2 on my list. It is the only modern sports that was invented by one person. If you think about all the other sports, football, soccer, baseball, all evolved from another sport. But basketball was invented by a person, and done so, by the way, in 2 weeks. James Naismith invented basketball in 14 days, which is just insane. What's also interesting is there's apparently new research that indicates that Naismith considered himself to be Scottish. He was born in what was then a British colony, and Canadian citizenship wasn't even legally codified until 1947, 8 years after his death. So basically, you've got 3 countries warring over who started basketball: Canada, America, and Scotland. But it's a Canadian who considered himself Scottish who invented the sport in America. Way to go, Dr. Naismith. And by the way, still the only losing coach in the history of the University of Kansas is the guy who invented the sport in 2 weeks.
He invented the sport, but he didn't know how to handle a 2-3 zone.
Number 1.
Imagine yelling at a ref as the inventor of the sport. Like, I know the rules. I invented this.
They get all the fouls. Number 1 for me, which, by the way, I've found a new sport that I'm going to chat with you guys about either today or tomorrow. Number 1, if it's not maple syrup, you're not doing it right. Like, Canada found tree juice and said, hey, that's pretty tasty. They turned it into $1 billion industry. Maple syrup is Canada's mic drop moment. They won breakfast forever.
We did not plan this, but I tell you, this could not have worked out any more perfectly. So they invented tree juice, maple syrup, and therefore then also needed to invent insulin, which is number 1 on my list. Before insulin, a diabetes diagnosis was essentially a death sentence. Well, thank goodness, because there'd be a lot of people in America, especially, with a death sentence. Basically, it was 3 Canadian scientists that extracted medicinal insulin, and then, in one of the most insanely heroic decisions in history, sold the patent for $1 so that it would be universally accessible. Now, sadly, it's been repatented in different forms, and the price is insane in some ways, but it was really cool that it was invented by scientists that then sold the patent for $1 so that millions of people could be saved, and that is the case. Despite what, price gouging there is for insulin right now. All right, there's the top 5 things that Canada brought to the world on July 1st, Canada's independence. It's Big 12
today. Have you ever
today.
been to Canada?
Oh, yeah. You kidding? You?
I've never been. It's on my bucket list.
Well, if you remember last summer for my 40th, I went to Alaska, which is technically in Canada. I mean, technically it's in America, but it feels like it should be in Canada. It's hanging on Canada. So you're kind of going back and forth between Canada and the United States while you're in Alaska. Also been in Montreal and Toronto.
Man, you've done it all.
I'm basically,
prestige worldwide.
Yes, that was what I was looking for. Absolutely. Not the 2 explorers that crossed the frontier, Lewis and Clark. I'm not Lewis and Clark exactly, but kind of. It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. The consensus culminates with our conversation over the next 2 days. Who is 1? Who is 2? James and I disagree. We argue our points next. This is Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
7. Middle run. That had the look of a 4-down play sequence. We'll see if they are going for 4 down below the 35 of Baylor. Baylor's defense has been able to do.
Levitt, blitz coming. It could have been worse. Jackie Marshall finally will get credit for the sack.
Jackie Marshall, just watch him, not truly rushing, right? Kind of just waiting to see what he does. He corrals him, grabs that left, right leg, and puts him to the ground. Little play action, Hoover, eyes downfield. The dump at the last moment to Rodgers.
He gets himself a ball game, even if he plays going that 3rd down, really does a nice job.
Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios with James Westling. I am Ari Temkin. So great to have you with us today and every day here on your home for the Big 12. TuneIn and Big 12 Studios. A reminder, you can always check out segments you may have missed as part of our Big 12 Today podcasts. Just search Big 12 wherever you get your podcasts and find us. It won't be hard to find. All right, we have been working our way through our preseason poll, the consensus, making arguments, coming up with reasons for why each team should be where we've placed them in our preseason poll. No guarantees in where they finish, just where we think they stack up today as we lead into Big 12 Media Days next week in Frisco. James created his own list of 16. I created my list. We've come together for the consensus. Cincinnati is the consensus number 16. Iowa State 15. Kansas at 14. UCF at 13. Baylor at 12. West Virginia 11. Colorado at 10. TCU at 9. Oklahoma State at 8. Arizona at 7. Arizona State at 6. Utah at 5. K-State at 4. Houston at 3. We find ourselves at 1 and 2. And between James and I, we only had one consensus in our preseason polls, which was Houston at 3. James has Texas Tech 1 and BYU 2. I have BYU 1 and Texas Tech 2. So what we're going to do today is sort of argue both sides. James, you're going to argue today that Texas Tech should be 1, and I'm going to argue that Texas Tech should be 2. Is that right? Is that what you were suggesting?
Well, I'm more arguing that BYU should be 2.
Got it. Yep. That's what you said. You said that. Yep. Okay. So let's pick up where we left off. So where did BYU finish in 2025?
Yeah. I mean, they had an incredible year, 12-2 overall, lost in the Big 12 championship game, won the Pop-Tarts Bowl, 12 wins for just the 5th time in program history, and their first since 2001. On paper, they had 7 wins against teams with winning records. That was the second most in school history. And they finished just outside of the top 10 at number 11. Everything on paper, statistically, the offense scored over 31 points per game. The defense allowed less than 20 at 19. That 30-20 combo has only happened 14 times in over 100 seasons of BYU football. But their blemishes, both against the same team, were the only 2 defenses that they faced that were top 30 all season. So against top 30 defenses, they scored only 31 combined points, and they averaged only 4.8 yards per play. So that profile is what BYU is trying to overcome this season. But in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, Bear Bachmeier was the MVP, had his best game of the year. 325 passing yards, a second-half comeback without L.J. Martin, who was sidelined because of an injury. So, that's a growth moment for Bachmeier that you definitely circle coming into this year.
Yeah, for Texas Tech, I mean, it's well documented. This was the historic season for them, their first outright conference title since 1955. They earned a first-round bye in the college football playoff. They went 12-2 overall and 8-1 Big 12 play. They knocked off by BYU twice, but lost in the quarterfinals of the CFP in the Orange Bowl to Oregon 23-0 in a game where they were completely outmatched. Offense, Texas Tech versus defense. All right, so what changed for BYU?
Yeah, so they have a really nice portal class, top 3 in the Big 12 net, but they lose their defensive coordinator. Jay Hill's off to Michigan. He built BYU's defense into one of the best units, not just in the league, but the entire country. And it wasn't just Jay Hill. He also took his passing game defensive coordinator with him. So 2 key defensive minds are out the door, not just one. And Hill's fingerprints are all over what made BYU's defense elite. And even though Kelly Poppinga was part of that family, he isn't Jay Hill. And then also Jack Kelly, the linebacker, gets drafted by the Giants, was one of just 17 players in the entire country that had double-digit sacks last year. They also lose Parker Kingston, the wide receiver who was dismissed from the program. Chase Roberts, their top receiver on paper, was out of eligibility. And then Cody Hagan. Cody Hagan has retired from football. He was wide receiver 2, expected to be wide receiver 2 coming into this season. He was their slot guy, a track and field champion in high school in the state of Utah, maybe their fastest receiver. He retired from football for injury reasons. So BYU enters this season without their top 3 wideouts, and they expected to have at least 2 of those guys back for this upcoming season.
Yeah, I mean, for Texas Tech, what changed? A lot. Now, there is coaching staff continuity, which is important, obviously, but you lose 9 players drafted. On top of that, countless others that left due to eligibility. So this is a new team in many regards. They do bring back some key pieces, but for the most part, this is a brand new team. All right, so roster construction grade for BYU, James.
Yeah, definitely give them at worst an A- because the Parker Kingston dismissal, those were unforeseen circumstances that were out of their control. Cody Hagan retiring, again, unexpected, unforeseen, out of their control. So to pivot, they bring in the best recruiting class in program history. Their high school class is top 20 nationally, second in the Big 12, only to Texas Tech. Their transfer portal class is top 3 nationally. 24/7 Sports Composite ranks them 15th with the 9 guys that they brought in, highlighted by Cade Ulave from Cal, who's the top-rated linebacker transfer in the entire country. And he considered Michigan. He considered Texas before ultimately choosing BYU. So they have the Jack Kelly replacement already right there. And then you brought up Paki Fanau from Washington, the offensive lineman, earlier. He's not the only one. They bring in an offensive lineman from Stanford who was a starter. They bring in one of the top group of 5 offensive linemen from Utah State. And then at receiver, they add a 6'6" Kyler Casper from Oregon, a former 4-star, plus the 2 tight ends. So on paper, I don't see anything worse than an A- in terms of what they've done with their roster.
Yeah, I give Texas Tech an A for roster construction grade. I mean, they're still going to be elite defensively. They were historically great. How good will they be? That's what we'll have to find out. But Ben Roberts and John Courier back at linebacker. They had Austin Romaine from K-State. They had Mateen Ibirogba from Wake Forest. The offensive line returns 3 starters. Plus, they get Hunter Zambrano back from injury, which, we saw Texas Tech get kind of manhandled up front against Oregon in the Orange Bowl, so they're going to need to improve there. You also have Felix Ojo, who at least right now, based on who's back, won't start, but we'll see. And then even though you added Sorsby, who is the bell, he was the kind of the top prospect you added, and he's not available for you anymore. They had a ton. Overall on defense, on the defensive line. Bryce Pollock is back in the secondary. They had receivers. So it feels like wherever holes they might have had based on the 9 players that were drafted have been filled through the portal, and that's why I gave them an A. The hinge point. What has to go right?
For me, it's Bear Bachmeier. Is it sophomore breakthrough or is it sophomore slump? Because last year, late in the season, his turnover-worthy play spiked. He only had 9 turnover-worthy plays the first 8 games. Then he had 11 over his final 6, and 5 of those came against Texas Tech, and Texas Tech turned all 5 into turnovers, 3 picks and 2 fumbles. He also has to improve his deep ball. Bear Bachmeier last year was 2 for 23 on throws outside the numbers beyond 20 yards. And against Texas Tech, because of all that pressure, he only attempted 2 deep passes the entire game. He also ranked 118th nationally out of 136 quarterbacks. Bachmeier was 118 in big-time throws per dropback. So he was taking the check down, safer throws. The deep ball just wasn't there for BYU. If you're going to go from good to great or from great to elite, that's going to be a huge measuring stick and hinge point for BYU this year.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're talking about the number 1 and number 2 teams of the Big 12, and yet for both of us, the hinge point is the quarterback. Sort of alarming in a sense. Will Hammond is the hinge point here. The pressure is on him now to succeed and to succeed immediately. Now, when will he be back? I think at a minimum, you need to get him back by week 3. When you open up, is it week 3 that they open up Big 12 play against Houston? Is that at week 3? Yeah,
it's like September 18th. Yeah.
And so look, I mean, Hammond, he's a 4-star from Hutto. He turned down Auburn, Oregon, Penn State, and Texas A&M coming out of high school. So, he's been there now. He'd suffered the injury last year. They brought in Sorsby because they didn't feel confident that Hammond will be ready to go. And we have seen him have a little bit of up and down play, but the ball is his now. He thought, he had a full year to kind of get ready and get acclimated, but he doesn't. The ball's his. He's the quarterback. It's time to go. All right, what's the one thing that could derail them?
So we've talked about the lack of depth or inexperience at receiver. We've talked about the new defensive coordinator in Kelly Papinga. But there's a major injury red flag that nobody's talking about, and that's the shoulder injury of running back L.J. Martin. L.J. Martin played through a shoulder injury that knocked him out of the Iowa State game in October. And even though 7 of his 12 touchdowns came in his final 4 games, he sat out the bowl game because he underwent shoulder surgery. This is a 225-pound running back who carries the ball 25 times a game. Now, he's already had the surgery, and I don't think the question is whether the shoulder is healed. We just talked to him a couple of weeks ago. It definitely has. But the question is, does it hold up over the course of an entire senior season workload where BYU is going to be leaning on him, and running backs take a lot of hits right at their shoulder. So I'm majorly concerned about L.J. Martin's durability. Remember, 2 years ago, he missed about half of the year. So he has to be at full strength for them to really shine.
Yeah. For me in Texas Tech, the one thing that could derail them is the defense, which is an odd thing to say because this still should be an elite defense. But remember, it was otherworldly last year. It was record setting. And so, for me, this defense has got to be elite again. It doesn't have to be record setting, but it also can't be average or above average. It can't be good. They were carried last year by an elite defense. And as they acclimate with Hammond and figure out how to get their offense going, it's the defense that they're going to have to count on all season long. That is the one thing that could derail Texas Tech. With James Wesley, Amari Temkin, this is the consensus, arguing 1 and 2 over the next 2 days. Coming up next, we talk about is too high, too low, or exactly right for BYU and Texas Tech, plus the ceiling and the floor. It's all coming up next as we continue here on The Consensus with James Wesley, Amari Temkin. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
On 3rd and 12, backside heat, fumbled it, it came out. Ball's on the ground. Cougars recover at the 5. Big hit by Jack Kelly.
3rd and 16. Jordan over the middle again. It's caught by Alvarez, but he's going to be taken down at the 39. It's to the holder. Here's the kick. It's blocked. And BYU trying to run it back here. Jack Kelly, who just made the defensive play, and now he does this.
Pressure coming from Kelly. Dampier hit and down he goes. Jack Kelly may have sealed it for BYU. Inside pressure on Hauser, and he's dropped. Jack Kelly, it was just a matter of time.
This season getting worked on here. Backside pressure. Hauser feels it, will not get away. And that is number 2 for Jack Kelly.
On the draw, dangerously close to being a safety. Micah Ford hit by who else? The ubiquitous, ever-present Jack Kelly. Salter flushed out, being spotted, dragged down at the 38-yard line by Jack Kelly.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. This is the consensus, and we've reached sort of the ultimate rankings here, getting to 1 and 2, where James and I disagree. So we're trying to come to consensus on our preseason poll for 1 and 2. I'm arguing for Texas Tech at 2, James for BYU at number 2. So, James, make the case here for BYU at 2. Is it too high? Is it too low? Or is it exactly right?
I think number 2 is exactly right. You know, they have a roster that looks really good, but they do have more weaknesses than I think Texas Tech, at least they did last year. Like their red zone defense last year was dead last in the Big 12. Opponents scored on 73% of their trips to the red zone and 17 touchdowns against only 10 field goals. Their third down offense was below average. They were 9th in the league, converted 38% of their third downs, and their pass rush production was modest at best. They had 21 sacks. That was middle of the pack in the Big 12. And even offensively, like on paper, over 400 yards per game, 5.8 yards per play, but that both categories are behind Utah, Texas Tech, and Cincinnati. So they had a top 5 offense, but it wasn't a top 2 offense. Now, they're super disciplined. They don't get penalized. They don't make mistakes. But are they explosive enough to be the best team in the preseason number 1 team in the Big 12? That's where I hesitate.
Yeah, you know, my opponent would have you believe that Bear Bachmeier is not a good quarterback, as he brought up some of his stats from before, 2 for 23 on throws outside the numbers down the field. You brought up some really interesting numbers. Now, I believe that those numbers are indicative of a true freshman playing for the first time ever at a school that he didn't play spring football with, but I digress. Big reason to me to have Texas Tech at 2 and BYU at 1 is the quarterback situation. I am buying Bear Bachmeier as a legitimate upper-end starter in the Big 12. I think the jury is still out, very much so, on Will Hammond and Texas Tech in that regard. If Sorsby's here, this is a different discussion, but he's not. And so we're left figuring out how to pick up the pieces for a Texas Tech quarterback situation that is not that cut and dried. You know, we assume that Will Hammond at some point will take over as the starter, but we don't know when that point is. And even if he does, or when he does, how successful will he be? We saw him have, you know, be up and down a little bit. To me, second is exactly right for Texas Tech because it sort of captures both realities simultaneously. They're not going to be 3rd or 4th in the Big 12. Like, the fact remains their schedule is easy enough to where, like, even without a solidified quarterback, they should be able to win 9-10 games. In fact, Vegas set Texas Tech's win total at 11.5. That's one of the highest in college football. I mean, 11.5 is a ridiculous number. So 2 is by far, to me, the lowest spot that they could possibly finish just based on the realities of their schedule. The coaching staff continuity, the defensive infrastructure, the portal investment, the scheduling advantages are all real. But placing them first over a BYU team returning 17 starters, a proven sophomore quarterback, the Big 12's best offensive line, and the reigning offensive player of the year at running back would be a vote for brand over roster. Putting Texas Tech 1 would basically be blindly saying, I trust that Texas Tech has accumulated, you know, the best roster of talent over the continuity and consistency that BYU brings to the table here. And that, more than anything, is the reason I put BYU at 1 and Texas Tech at 2.
Yeah, and I do think at the quarterback position, BYU is more established. Bear Bachmeier should have another really solid year. And if he can clean up some of the downfield throws, have more time, because when he has time in the pocket, his numbers are elite. 11% of his throws last year traveled 20 or more yards downfield. That ranked 115th nationally. They only attempted 2 deep balls against Texas Tech. So is that more on Bachmeier, or is that some on the offensive coordinator? And will they try to open up that deep passing game? The other thing that
20 yards or more?
Yeah, 20 or more yards. 11% of his throws traveled 20-plus yards downfield. That was 115th in the country. So
I venture a guess that's by design. But go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, with a true freshman quarterback, absolutely. But that's a question that I have. And do they have the receivers that can get behind defenses and stretch the field. JoJo Phillips was hurt most of last year. He's supposed to be their burner this year. Where is he at in terms of his growth? Because he's very green, very inexperienced. He's barely been on the field the last 2 seasons. But defensively, there's a lot to like about both. And with Texas Tech, yes, it's trusting the process, right? It is brand defensively, and did they hit on these portal guys? But the gap last year when it came to getting pressure on opposing quarterbacks, BYU's defense last year generated pressure on just 9% of pass rushing snaps. To put that into perspective, David Bailey alone hit 21% for Texas Tech. And the front as a whole produced pressure 73% more often than BYU. So I would need to see a major uptick in terms of explosiveness from BYU's defensive ends versus the guys that all grade out as elite pass rushers once again for Texas Tech.
All right, what's the ceiling and the floor for BYU?
Well, the ceiling is an undefeated season. Now, I think BYU has a tougher schedule. They've got some tricky road games. They play at TCU. They play at Utah. Major revenge game for the Utes. BYU's won 3 in a row in that series, the first time that either side's won 3 in a row since the 80s. And then they've got home games against Notre Dame. They've got a tricky home game against Arizona State because I'm high on the Sun Devils. And they play Arizona week 2 on Saturday, September 12th. So I think the ceiling is you don't have Texas Tech on your schedule, and you went undefeated last year against teams not named Texas Tech. There's no reason to believe that they couldn't do that again. So I think an undefeated regular season and another Big 12 championship game appearance and a college football playoff appearance is their ceiling.
Yeah, for Texas Tech, I think the ceiling and the floor are pretty similar. Your ceiling is, undefeated regular season, second straight Big 12 championship, second consecutive CFP appearance. I think that one's pretty easy and obvious to picture. The floor, though, is something that I just sort of hit on, which is, what if it takes Hammond more time to get ready? What if the D-line regresses and it's not as dominant as it was last year? What if there's a key upset? I still, again, don't see a world in which they win less than 9 games, again, based on schedule and talent. But I think the ceiling is 12 wins. The floor is probably 9 wins.
And that's probably where I would have BYU's floor. I could see a path where BYU does have an 8-4 season. But for that to happen, I think LJ Martin's health would be number one. Like, I'm really worried about that shoulder. And I'm worried about it because, yes, he had the surgery, but he hasn't been healthy each of the last 2 seasons. Even last year as the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, he couldn't play in the bowl game. He didn't play for 3 quarters against Iowa State. And 2 years ago, he missed about half the season. And if LJ Martin goes down, it puts more pressure on Bear Bachmeier and those really, really young, inexperienced wide receivers. And that recipe could be a disaster. But a disaster for me is still 8-4 because it's really hard to go into Provo and win. So I could see 4 losses against Utah, Notre Dame, TCU, and then either Arizona or Arizona State. I just think they're too disciplined and they're too fundamentally sound and physical for them to lose all of those games. So 8-4 is probably their floor.
All right, make your case here for BYU locked in at number 2.
Yeah, I would say, just kind of the culmination of everything we've been talking about. Defensively, replacing Jack Kelly could be a tall order. Like, Cade Ulave has all the stats and all the tackles, but he was part of a defense that was not good at Cal last year. The pressure rate, 9.4% on pass rushing snaps, that's a major red flag for me. And then LJ Martin's health and the questions that I have at receiver and Bachmeier taking that next step. Like, everything we've heard out of the spring is that Bachmeier is more polished. He's got a better understanding of the offense, et cetera, et cetera. That all sounds great, but who you're going to be throwing the football to if LJ Martin isn't healthy all year? Worst case scenario, I still see BYU as a top 3, top 4 team in the Big 12, but I just don't have enough confidence in all those things to put them as my preseason favorite.
Yeah, look, for Texas Tech, to me, number 2 is the only ranking that doesn't require you to ignore something very important here. You can put them first and dismiss the fact that their starting quarterback was recovering from an ACL injury with 109 career pass attempts. And the 4 defensive linemen who made that defense historically great are all in the NFL. Like, we can't just ignore those things, especially in comparison to a BYU team that's returning 17 players and including a quarterback who won games last year as a true freshman without the benefit of spring football. Now, you also can't put them lower than second and ignore the fact that they just won the Big 12 by 3 touchdowns in the title game and turned the best defensive coaching staff of the conference. To me, second's the number, right? I mean, if you put them 1, you're ignoring the obvious glaring pieces that stand out about the defensive line turnover and the defensive turnover and the quarterback situation. That, to me, is the best argument I can make for Texas Tech at 2 and BYU at 1. We will figure out who 1 and 2 are tomorrow when I make the case for BYU at 1 and you make the case for Texas Tech at 1. This is the consensus powered by Modelo here on Big 12 Today, Big 12 Radio. Spencer Litton, host of BYU Sports Nation, joins us next. He'll tell us why he thinks BYU should be number 1. It's Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Play fake. Hammond, sideline, back shoulder. Virgil twist to grab it. And in a hurry, Texas Tech is right in front of Arizona State.
6 on the left-hand side, starting his 50th game this afternoon. Looking long, it's Virgil. He's got it inside the 15. He beat Henderson again.
To corral those defenders, they do a good job there.
Reverse, Virgil. Reverse.
There goes Virgil.
Virgil. Oh yeah. A hop, skip, and a jump touchdown.
Virgil's got the first down, still on his feet. And Virgil is going to take it inside the 35.
Goal. Morton with all kinds of time. Virgil! Reggie! Oh my goodness, what's happened to Virgil today?
Hammond, they throw it up top again. Now they're showing off. Touchdown, Reggie Virgil.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios, along with James Westling. I am Ari Temkin, and a reminder that the brand spanking new Big 12 app is available now with Big 12 Radio. You can get breaking news, scores, follow along with your favorite conference, my favorite conference, everybody's favorite conference, the Big 12, on the brand spanking new Big 12 app, which of course features us, Big 12 Radio, on TuneIn and Big 12 Studios. And of course, make sure to check us out on YouTube by searching Big 12 Conference. You can live stream our show there, find all of our highlights, as well as at big12studios.com. Find the places and platforms you can stream us, Tubi, Roku, Amazon Prime Video, and plenty others. Go check it out at big12studios.com. James?
Spencer Linton is in the house. What's up, Spencer?
Linton is
Greetings,
in
gentlemen.
the house.
Let's go USA.
Love it. Sick jersey, dude. Love it. The blue ones are way better than the white ones.
Right? It took me a minute to get it, but I found it, and I'm rocking it. Absolutely. I'm all in, man.
Well,
All right, so what's your prediction of the Bosnia-Herzegovina score tonight?
USA by 2 goals, whether it's 2-0 or 3-1. I think they win by a comfortable margin and get into the round of 16, and then we'll see after that. But I am wholeheartedly a believer in this tournament, what it's done for the country, what it does for the world. And home field matters, my friends. It matters a lot. You ask France in 98, ask South Korea in 2002, and they went all the way to the semifinals. Germany finished 3rd on their home field in 06. It's time for the United States to do something special on their home soil.
Love it. I'm here for it. And yeah, if you watched the Mexico-Ecuador game last night, like, talk about home field, that place was electric.
It's incredible.
Imagine
Incredible.
what it was like.
Yeah,
Spencer,
had to rival Provo on a ball Saturday.
Hey, listen, on a couple of occasions, the BYU Utah games, and then even when BYU hosted Kansas State back in 2024, and they had that incredible middle 8 minutes where seemingly everything went wrong for Kansas State, and BYU could do nothing but put together explosive plays. I thought LaVell Edwards Stadium was seriously going to lift off the ground. That was incredible.
It was insane. James remembers that.
I remember it quite well as a proud Kansas State alum. That was
Sorry, James.
That was a rough stretch. It was like K-State's up 7-3. I run to the kitchen, grab a snack, and it's 28-7. Like, what happened? It all happened in a flurry. Well, speaking of soccer or football, BYU football, starting a rumor I saw last night. The tight end room I know is stacked with the transfers coming in. Maybe there's one more in LeBron James.
There's always room for King James if he opts to go to football. Now, I know he's into his 40s, you guys, but you're telling me if eligibility was waived or the requirements to get him in and somehow find a way for him to play, you tell me a bunch of teams wouldn't at least roll it out to give it a go just to see what happens?
Totally, 1,000%. All right, so
I was thinking LeBron for the Jazz. You pair LeBron with the future LeBron and Darren Peterson. Why not? You know,
I wouldn't complain. You know, if you want to create some additional buzz and you want to make the Jazz are already going to be relevant. I think they're going to be a playoff team. But if you want to take that next level, I don't know that they have the financial cap space to do it, you guys. But yeah, that would definitely make basketball in Utah super relevant for the first time probably since Stockton and Malone in the late 90s.
All right, let's talk football, shall we? This is the consensus, and we got you on to talk BYU football as we try to get consensus. Laying it all out here, James put together his preseason poll, 1 through 16. I put together mine.
Mm-hmm.
I have BYU 1, Texas Tech 2. James put BYU 2 and Texas Tech 1.
Okay.
So tell our great audience here why you agree with me that BYU should be number 1 in this preseason poll.
I can't believe I'm about to say this, Ari, but I put out my poll yesterday on BYU Sports Nation, and I actually am in line with James.
No.
I have Texas Tech number 1 and BYU number 2. And here's why. Here's why. You guys know better than most, probably the best of anyone. When you assess the schedules, what does Texas Tech's schedule look like? And what does BYU's schedule look like? Perceivably, the Red Raiders have the easiest or one of the easiest paths back to a Big 12 championship game, and I think they have a real shot to, if not go 11-1, go undefeated. And so I just think BYU's schedule is it's probably in the top half of toughest conferences, tough schedules in the conference. So I've got BYU number 2 because of how the schedule worked out. It's unfortunate they don't play, but that's why I have Texas Tech 1 and BYU 2.
Spencer, what are the biggest, I guess, concerns about BYU for this season?
Well, it's hard to not look at what BYU's receivers are going to do. Most BYU fans are all in on Bear Bachmeier taking a significant step forward, and LJ Martin returning is a huge boost for that offense, and the offensive line should be pretty good too. So it's not that the offense will struggle per se, but what is the pass game? If you don't have Chase Roberts and Parker Kingston, and you have largely unproven guys out there, what will BYU's passing attack be? And I feel like you have to have a balanced attack to be good enough to get back to Arlington and play in another Big 12 championship game. So how does Kyler Casper come in as a transfer from Oregon, who I think has only caught 6 passes his entire collegiate career? What can he do? Can JoJo Phillips stay healthy and emerge as a guy? Like what can BYU do in the pass game to help Bear Bachmeier out? And that's a concern. And then naturally, when you lose a defensive coordinator as good as Jay Hill was, and he goes to Michigan because he's the man and he's following Kyle Whittingham, and I expect their defense to be great under Jay Hill. Like, Kelly Papinga's been around, but it's still the first go around with him fully in charge of this defense. How will things be different? Will there be some breakdowns? Will there be an acclimation period for the little changes that they throw into the defense? So those are probably the top 2 concerns for me. And there could be a few weird moments and some growing pains, and that probably is what would present itself as the biggest concerns for me surrounding BYU football. They'll be a great team, but those are the concerns.
Yeah, and I mean, we're talking here about 1 and 2, right? We're not talking about 14 and 15 here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this was number 2 in the Big 12, and with 12 wins last year, they've won more games in the Big 12 the last 2 years without winning a Big 12 championship. So to your point, like these are, we're pointing to very few flaws both of these teams have, but trying to point out the flaws nonetheless to figure out who's 1 and who is 2. For me, a big reason why is the 17 returning starters, the returning production, and then Bear Bachmeier. I'm just, as I'm sure you are, extremely optimistic about this kid's future, given what he did last year with extremely little preparation.
Yeah, what can he do with a full offseason? And we've talked about that recently. He got to BYU's campus in June of last year.
It's insane. He won the
I
job.
know it is. It is. They committed in April. At that point, Jake Retzloff was still the incumbent starter and was clearly the guy. And Bear Bachmeier was going to have a year to learn under Jake and get used to the system and fully acclimate. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh wait, Jake Retzloff's gone. Now you're competing for the starting job. He arrives on campus in June and is named the starter essentially 2.5 months later, and becomes the first true freshman starting quarterback in BYU history, which I know you guys know very well. BYU has a long history of elite quarterback success. So for him to make history that way and then go out and be what he was and lead BYU to a 12-win season, I've said it before, I think there are 6 quarterbacks since the year 2000 as true freshmen that have led their teams to 10-plus win seasons. Bear Bachmeier is the most recent to do it. The majority of that group played the national championship. Those are guys like Jalen Hurts. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy what he did last year with that limited time frame. So great point by you, Ari. That's why BYU fans are so high on Bear, with a full offseason and bringing back as much experience around him as they do, especially LJ Martin. It feels appropriate for BYU to be one of the favorites, if not the favorite, to win the Big 12.
Spencer, what reports or have you seen in terms of how Bear looked in the spring, and specifically the deep ball? Because he didn't attempt a ton of deep passes, and when he did, they just weren't there.
Yeah. Okay. So you ask a great question, James, and I'll answer it in 2 parts. One, the coach has been very bullish on the cerebral nature of Bear and just how incredibly gifted he is in his mind. And so if you liked how quickly he adapted to the playbook last year, now imagine what he has done with a full year, really diving into the deep nuances. Like Barrett keeps talking about timing and, finding the perfect moment to release the ball. Like he's in the details. So they've seen great improvement there. And he has absolutely mastered the playbook. There's no excuses now. He says that he feels 110% confident in anything and everything that Aaron Roderick wants to do. And there will be some unique packages that they throw in there, but Bear Bachmeier will be ready. So the cerebral nature of him has helped him take a great step forward in the football classroom, if you will. But it's funny you ask about the deep ball, because when you look at the analytics, Pro Football Focus, and where he has been most successful, the edges down the field have been an area where they just haven't attempted a ton of passes and haven't had great success. They feel like Kyler Casper and JoJo Phillips with their size. JoJo's 6'3", Kyler Casper 6'6". They feel like they can stretch the defense down the edges of the field and let those guys go and make one-on-one plays. So that has been a point of emphasis to find new ways to stretch defenses in areas where BYU didn't do that last year. And certainly, James, to your point, there's room for improvement there. So they're working on it, and having some bigger physical receivers on the edge, helps make a difference there.
Spencer Litton, BYU Television. Spence, always appreciate your time and insight. Looking forward to hanging out with you next week in person, man. Be well.
You guys are the best. USA, let's do this.
Let's do this. USA. USA. Love it. Spencer Litton joining us here on Big 12 Today, Big 12 Radio. Spence will be out, of course, with the rest of his cohorts at BYU Television at the Big 12 Media Days next week in Frisco. All right, Big 12 Today. Gary Parrish joins us next. You're not going to want to miss the college basketball expert from CBS. He joins us. This is Big 12 Today with James Wesley. I'm Ari Temkin. But first, James, just quickly kind of recapping what we heard there from Spence. Surprising to a degree that he says Texas Tech 1, BYU 2, which gives me less ammo in my pursuit to make BYU 1 in our preseason poll in the consensus. But I think, for a guy that is as close to BYU as anybody, some pretty good questions of legitimacy about this team heading into this season.
Yeah, well, and most of his questions centered around the schedule. It is much more challenging than it was last year. BYU could have a better team and still not win as many games because they've got Notre Dame. They've got those really tough road games. They've got Arizona State and TCU on the road. And I didn't hear anything from him that was super alarming in terms of the roster and the pieces that they have. I was actually really encouraged by what he said about the wide receivers and the lack of downfield passing. Frankly, I didn't realize JoJo Phillips is 6'3" because he's known as a burner and a slot guy. So having that big, he's got all the tools to be a future pro and like a day 2, second or third round future pro if it all comes together. So I'm encouraged by the roster. It's just that schedule's brutal, man.
Yeah, especially in comparison to Texas Tech. Good call. I will say I think it's going to be very funny. I'm making a prediction here. The first offensive play for BYU this year, Aaron Roderick is going to call a deep pass down the sideline. I guarantee you. They're going to be working on it all offseason. First play they're going to call a play action shot down the field to JoJo Phillips. I'm calling it right now.
I think they'll hand the ball off to LJ Martin and probably be up 2 touchdowns before the offense even takes the field because I think they open against an FCS power of, last year they beat Portland State by like 80. This year they open up against the Trailblazers of Utah Tech.
Hey, don't sleep on Utah Tech. They're very technical. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. Thanks for laughing at that dad joke. James Wesley, Ari Temkin. On the way next, it's Gary Parrish from CBS. This is Big 12 Today.
Bachmeier delivers, caught miraculously by Chase Roberts.
Comfortable in the pocket here. Chase Roberts turning it. Coming the other way. Inside the 30. And Chase Roberts.
And it is a bookstore, but it's really a museum.
Well, they might put that one in the museum one day. Good catch by Chase Roberts at BYU. 5 minutes to go in the first. Bachmeier surveys, pulls. Touchdown Cougars. Mr. BYU, Chase Roberts.
Off the RPO, what a strike. Chase Roberts chugging across the 40, tight ropes the sideline, and finally pulled down by Darian Lewis at the 4-yard line.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios, along with James Westling. I am Ari Temkin. Gary Parrish from CBS Sports will join us here momentarily to talk, kind of wrap a bow around the NBA draft. It's always fun to catch up with Gary Parrish on all things. He's fantastic. Ion College Basketball Podcast, CBS Sports. But James, is now the draft is in the rearview mirror. The NBA is heated in its offseason. Kawhi Leonard is going back to the Raptors. LeBron James is going to be somewhere, but not in LA. Bronny James is out the door. It's an exciting time for the NBA, and pretty soon we'll get to summer workouts for college basketball.
Yeah, and wasn't Kawhi Leonard rumored to maybe be reuniting with the guy that took a huge flyer on him in Toronto, here in Dallas? The former Toronto general manager is now the president of the Mavs in Ujiri, and there were a lot of trade rumors swirling around Kawhi Leonard, and it would have been kind of a similar situation where he would have been on a really short-term contract, and then they would have tried to use that cap space to sign some big names for next offseason. But NBA free agency, did it start at midnight?
Yes.
Here for it. Have the Bulls signed LeBron?
No, not yet. No, not yet. But they did sign Norman Powell, it appears. Gary Parrish from CBS Sports, the Ion College Basketball Podcast, joining us here on Big 12 Radio. Gary, how are you?
Wonderful. How are you guys?
Great. Since we're talking NBA, want to get your thoughts college basketball overall, but you are in Memphis, and Ja Morant is out of town now finally. So is this good news for Grizzlies fans?
I think it's good news for the franchise, sad news for the fan base. I mean, this was the centerpiece of everything. This is a young man who came here after a couple of years at Murray State as the second pick in the draft, was the rookie of the year in his first season, was All-NBA at the age of 22. And people forget this because it's been a roller coaster since this happened, but there was a time in back-to-back years where ESPN, they have a panel of analysts and writers who cover the league, and they do this every year. But in back-to-back years, they were asked to vote over the next 5 seasons what franchise in the NBA is best positioned to, win the championships. Just if you could pick any franchise right now, which one would it be? 2 years in a row was the Memphis Grizzlies, in part because of a core of Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson Jr., all of whom were at the time 23 or under. Since they won a playoff series in 2022 with Ja Morant as the face of everything, they never won another thing. Ja only played 79 games the past 3 years in the regular season. Long story, not so long. It was time for the franchise to move on, but I think I can safely tell you that the majority of the fan base, first off, everybody wishes this would have gone differently, but the majority of the fan base yesterday when the news went down, it was just it was a tinge of sadness, like an awesome marriage that should have ended better than this one did.
Well said.
But they do still have the best throwback uniform in sports history. Shout out to Big Country, okay, with the Grizzlies throwback. It is sick.
You know what? I'm conflicted with that because they look unbelievable. My kids have all of it. I even have the hat with the colors, but it often comes with the word Vancouver. Yeah. And this is our team. Like, we stole this team fair and square. And I like to see Memphis as opposed to Vancouver. So I struggle with that one because the uniforms look great. The colors are amazing. I just wish we would scrap Vancouver, put Memphis in big, bold letters.
Well, yeah, and speaking of hats, I also just noticed that you had the exact same takeaway from night one of the NBA draft that we did. We are like sitting here the next day fact-checking one another. Did this guy actually end up with this team? Because guys are putting on NBA draft hats of the teams that they're never going to play for. They get traded. It's so hard to follow.
It's just outrageous. Like, my wife, God bless her, she was at home during the draft and in a group text with her friends. As you know, we live in Memphis, and so we're surrounded by Grizzlies fans, and my kids care about it. My wife cares about it. Obviously, it was a big night for the franchise. They're trying to follow the draft. And my wife at some point was like, I'm texting her on the side in commercial breaks. She's got Jay Billis's tweets on lock, and she's like, I still have no idea. Like, I'm reading everything Jay tweets. I'm listening to everything you say. I have no idea what's going on. Kareem Lopez last week was the 21st pick in the draft, technically by the Detroit Pistons. But we all knew when that pick happened. I wouldn't say my wife didn't know, but those of us who really follow it knew that pick, whoever they announced, was going to the Memphis Grizzlies. But they announced it for the Detroit Pistons. My wife is confused. Kareem Lopez also confused. He has subsequently said when he was on stage with Adam Silver, shaking hands, putting on a hat, he had no idea who actually he played for. He had to hear it from a reporter subsequently. Oh, by the way, the Grizzlies are the ones that picked you. He was like, oh, that's awesome, I guess. But there's got to be a better way to do it. I don't have a simple solution for you, because if there was a simple solution, I think they would have implemented it so far already. But there's just got to be a better way to do it. Here would be my suggestion for Adam Silver. Get on Twitter. Find the 5 nerdiest people who argue about this kind of stuff all day long because they got nothing better to do. Fly them to New York, first class, get them into a room, figure it out. We should be able to have young men in what is a dream night for them. We should at least have them to have pictures from that night that make sense. And men putting on hats. This is a million years ago, but there are Penny Hardaway hats. Penny Hardaway draft night pictures in a Golden State Warriors hat. He never played for the Warriors. We knew he wasn't playing for the Warriors in real time. We knew he was going to be a member of the Orlando Magic. Those pictures exist. Why? It makes no sense.
Kobe with the Hornets. My kids were asking me that Kobe played for the Hornets. I was like, no, he was never going to play for the Hornets.
Okay, see, the other, you shouldn't even, that question should not have to be asked, and you shouldn't have to explain it. The fact that that is an experience in your life suggests that this has been a problem forever, and it's actually ridiculous that they haven't fixed it yet. Because, like I said on CBS Sports HQ last week, at the end of the day, when you really boil it down, what is that last Tuesday night, Wednesday night that we're watching? It's a television show. Right. And it should not be a confusing television show, but that's what it was. It was the type of television show, and I love these shows, but I watch them for an hour, and then I go read about it for 2 because I have no idea what's going on. That's what the NBA draft is. You watch it, and how about this? There was a watch party here inside FedEx Forum because, like I said, big night for the fan base, for the franchise. With the 16th pick in the 2026 NBA draft, the Memphis Grizzlies, this is the way it was announced, select Bennett Sturts. FedEx Forum, the crowd goes crazy. Woohoo, we love Bennett Sturts. Oh, no, that's not you. He's going somewhere else. You traded down one spot. Okay, with the 17th pick in the whatever draft, this is you. They select Christian. Wow, that's who we wanted in the Oh, no. You traded down again. That's not you either. The crowd literally erupted for Cameron Boozer, for Bennett Sturts, for Christian Anderson, and by the time they got to Kareem Lopez, I think they were worn out. They couldn't clap anymore.
I want to get your Big 12 takes, but I also, as a Bulls fan, have to ask you about 3 and 4 in this draft. And as a college basketball expert, should I have been excited as a Bulls fan to hear Boozer's name go 3rd because that meant that Caleb Wilson was going to the Bulls?
I would say you should be excited that you're getting Caleb Wilson, not because Cameron Boozer was off the board. There are I was going to say there are analytics boards, there's all of them, all the analytics boards. They have Cameron Boozer as the best prospect. And the Grizzlies, I can just tell you, were thrilled that he fell to them. I don't think they wanted to have to make the Darren Peterson call, given how the Ja Morant experience unfolded. Good luck trying to tell your franchise fan base, hey, we just replaced the guy who never played with a guy who just never played. That's a tough sell. And I say that as a fan of Darren Peterson. If Boozer would have come off the board too, I would have wanted the Grizzlies to select Darren Peterson, but buddy, that would have been tough. So the Grizzlies are thrilled. Boozer right now the favorite to be Rookie of the Year. There are smart basketball people who have nothing to do with the Grizzlies, nothing to do with Cameron Boozer, just evaluate stuff, and they think he can be an all-star as a rookie. We don't usually talk about rookies that way. So here in Memphis, they're thrilled. But in Chicago, and for Bulls fans, should also be thrilled because Caleb Wilson was not a top 3 pick in this draft. I think he's got a top 3 upside ceiling in this draft. I've said this a bunch. I believe it to be true. If everybody in this draft becomes the best versions of themselves, everything you can reasonably imagine them being, best version, I think the best player is Darren Peterson. I don't know that he'll be that because most of us don't become the best versions of ourselves. DeAndre Ayton was the number 1 pick in the draft once upon a time. He is not the best version of himself. Ben Simmons is not the best version of himself. Frankly, I'm not the best version of myself. Most of us don't accomplish that. But if everybody does, I think Darren Peterson's the best, and I think Caleb Wilson is top 3. The athleticism is elite, best available last week. The motor runs great all the time. He's not a technically perfect defensive player or even sound, but there's moments throughout that season when he was healthy where you could tell he cared. And the way he speaks about himself is stuff I really like. Like, well, hey, what are you going to do when you get to Chicago? I'm going to change the franchise. I'm going to change the city. I'm going to change the culture. I don't know whether he's capable of that, but I like that he thinks he is. I like that he wants to. And so the jump shot's the swing skill, as they say. Like, if that comes around, we're talking Hall of Fame stuff. But even if it doesn't, even if he's a non-shooter for much of his career, he just is explosive around the rim, led the nation in dunks, even though he missed a bunch of games, and averaged more dunks per game than Zion did in his one season at Duke. So you're talking about like explosive stuff. I'm a big fan. I think he should have gone 4 in this draft because of his strength at the top. But if you told me he's a 7-time NBA All-Star, not surprising to me.
Gary, it's interesting with Peterson, all the talk about the cramps and the creatine, but there's no knocks on his game. Is there anything not to love about his game? Like, if he's healthy, what is he 5 years from now?
I mean, if he's healthy, he's a consistent all-star and Hall of Fame talent worth hundreds of millions of dollars, which I think played a role in how he was handled at Kansas. I think they were over careful to a fault. Like, I think if he just is healthy, I'll answer it this way. If he's just healthy his freshman year at Kansas and just plays the way he played, he's probably the first pick of the draft. The only reason he wasn't, I don't want to say the only reason he wasn't, among the reasons he wasn't, because AJ DeBonta is also awesome. And like Cameron Boozer is, amazing. And there was other real options at the top of this draft. But I think certainly on the list is people weren't comfortable with how the freshman year unfolded. And it's not just the creatine, although like whatever. I don't, if you got a creatine problem, I don't know why you don't talk about that in November, December, January, February, March, when the whole world's saying what's wrong with you. Like, that question was presented to him in his camp a million times. What's wrong with you? They could have told that story whenever they wanted to. That they waited till after the season in advance of the draft to tell it felt, I don't know, convenient. Like they're just trying to, here's a story for you. I don't doubt that he cramped. In fact, I'm sure that he did. To me, though, that's not the biggest concern, because you can deal with that. And if the medicals come back and it says that's not considered to be a long-term issue, which is my understanding is what the medicals suggested, then whatever. I believe cramping is genuinely in Darren Peterson's past. Here's what I didn't like, and this is the thing that gets unsaid by most. I don't like the Big Monday game against Arizona. Kansas is inside Allen Fieldhouse. Arizona's ranked number 1 in the country, undefeated. Got 2, what we now know were first-round draft picks on the roster. This is a big night. I remember it clearly. I was in New York City, getting ready to go in studio the next night, watching it in a hotel room. He didn't play. It's not because of cramping. It's not because of creatine. It's because of flu-like symptoms. And I don't doubt that he felt sick. I don't doubt that he had flu-like symptoms. I just don't understand why you don't try to play in that game. And here's the truth. He didn't try to play in that game. His coaching staff thought he was playing. He didn't. They didn't have a great explanation for why other than he didn't feel well. And perhaps this is me projecting, but if I didn't feel well, I would make it clear to my coaching staff, I don't feel well, but I'm going to give this a go. And if I can't do it, you'll see it. Come get me. But you're going to have to pull me off that court because I'm not going to make you answer more questions about why I'm not available. I don't want people making jokes about me why I'm not available. I'm sick, but the cameras are going to have to show it. You're going to have to see me sweat and be sick on TV tonight. I'm not just tapping out of a game an hour before tip-off. Why did that happen? Because I don't think every player taps out of that game. Perhaps he's got a great story for why that happened, but I didn't feel well isn't good enough for me. Again, to repeat, it would not be the thing that prevented me from drafting him very high, but it is the thing that makes me wonder exactly, what he's dealing with, because the talent is undeniable, but a lot of times the difference between being a star and a superstar is how are you wired right here? What matters to you and what doesn't? What do you care about and what do you not? Because I understand protecting your draft status, but that decision, that hurt his draft status. It didn't help at all.
Yeah, well said. As a Kansas alum, couldn't agree with you more. Which Big 12 draft pick surprised you the most? Was it Koa Pete? Was it Chris Sinak? Was it maybe Richie Saunders? Which one surprised you the most?
I don't know that any of them surprised me. Like, I wrote a column from Big 12 spring meetings about the Koa Pete situation because the last day I was there was the morning after the deadline to withdraw from the draft. And it was interesting because you're there doing Big 12 business as a men's basketball coach. But like, I was also watching Tommy Lloyd like step out of meetings and take phone calls about Koa. He wasn't talking about Braden Burries. They knew that one was done, but they were trying to re-recruit Koa Pete, not for selfish reasons as much as, hey, do you know that you're leaving money on the table? If you want to go, go, but you're leaving money on the table based on everything we know. He clearly just wanted to be a professional basketball player ASAP. He is. I wish him luck. He's going to make $3 million next season based on his draft slot. That's better than most of us. Congratulations. But he would have made more money at Arizona. It was clear after the way he shot the ball at the combine that he was not going to be a top 10 pick, lottery pick. There was real risk of him slipping into the second round. I wasn't surprised that he slipped. He might have been, but he shouldn't have been. I hope his career goes well from here, but I really think he's going to look back, or at least there's a chance he'll look back and wonder what if forever, because he could have been, and this is the way I choose to look at it. Others can look at it however they want, but I work with former basketball players. I've been around them for the past 20, 30 years, and I can tell you they almost always look back at college fondly. Yeah. Once you get to the NBA, it's a job. And once you go from being Koa Pete at Arizona to Koa Pete in the NBA, you have probably created a situation for yourself where you will never be the best player on your team again. He gave that up. You could have next season, for whatever this is worth, and it would have been worth a lot to me, be the best player on one of the top 10 teams in the country, playing in sold-out arenas twice a week, on national television every game, private planes, the whole deal. As it stands, he's going to sit on a bench a lot next season, probably for the first time in his life. That's not fun. He's going to bounce, I would assume, back and forth between the NBA and the G League. You get in the G League, that ain't private planes anymore. That's a Delta flight connected in Atlanta. You're in 32B, 6'9", 250. Congratulations. So I wasn't surprised, to answer your question, but I hope that's a lesson for others. Like, this isn't, you ain't choosing between a scholarship and a professional life anymore. It's millions of dollars in college available for you. If I'm surprised by anything, it's that he didn't have people around him that made him better understand exactly what he was walking into and what he was leaving behind.
That's a really good point. Gary, what do you think about Dusty May leaving the college game for the NBA?
It makes sense to me, knowing Dusty. You know, I've known Dusty for a long time, since he was a very young assistant coach. And I think if you just paid attention to anything he said after winning the national championship, you knew that he was a little disillusioned with the state of the sport. The calendar is ridiculous right now. And I want to be clear. Dusty May is making a lot of money at Michigan. All these coaches at the power conference level are multimillionaires. But they have really challenging jobs right now. It's a hard way to make a lot of money. And just look at the Dusty May story, and I think you can get some indications of why he decided, man, this ain't for me anymore if I've got another great option. To be clear, if being the head coach at Michigan is your best option, then you're just going to be the head coach at Michigan and you're going to make the best of it and love it. But he was presented with another unbelievable option. And the option he left behind, this is what he had to do this past season. You build a team in last summer through the transfer portal, negotiating deals and just hoping it'll come together. Then it does. You achieve a professional dream, one that most people never do. Even people who make it to your level in the sport never actually hold that trophy on the first Monday night in April. You do it in your home state. This is crazy. One shining moment. All right, that's done. In 45 minutes, we've got a Zoom call with another recruit because the transfer portal just opened. You guys want to celebrate the biggest professional accomplishment of our lives with our families and our players and each other, or do y'all want to jump on a Zoom and recruit? They made the decision, obviously, I think, to push the Zoom off and celebrate together and enjoy the moment, but they also knew that they were maybe costing themselves with a recruit. There's a story that my colleague Matt Norlander tells where Dusty, like 2 days after the national championship, he's on the phone with his wife, and she's like, so I know you had to do that and that and that and that. Are you coming home now? And he said no. Couldn't even go home to see his wife after accomplishing the biggest thing you can accomplish in his profession. He was ready to keep doing it, but it was exhausting and not fun. And when presented with an opportunity to just coach a basketball team, because in the NBA, I don't want to oversimplify it, but that's all you do. You coach your basketball team. You watch film and you coach your basketball team. In college, you watch film, coach your basketball team, game's over, meet with the media, 3 recruits and their families are coming into your office. You got to talk to all of them, take pictures, drive home. You're probably on the phone with some AAU coach or an agent. Get up the next day, you're doing it all again. Got to play golf with a billionaire because how else are you fundraising this thing? You don't even want to play golf. You don't have time to play. The life is so much easier in the NBA. Dusty took it. And I'm telling you this, if you guys put together a list of the 10 college coaches best equipped to next jump to the NBA. Like if you're an NBA franchise, here's 10 college coaches I would be interested in. You guys can have your own list. They can give the list to me. I'll text 10 of those guys and say, hey, but just between us, good NBA job calls tomorrow. What are you doing? 9 of the 10 would say, I'm leaving. The only ones who wouldn't are guys like John Shire because he's at Duke and it's set up and it says alma mater and I'm not leaving this thing. But most of them, they would go just as soon as they got the same phone call Dusty got.
Well said. Real quick, does Dusty have, I mean, many of these coaches that made the jump have not been successful. To me, I think Dusty will be because just how smart he is schematically. What do you think on that?
He's got Cooper Flagg. That's a great place to start. You know,
Yeah.
A lot of it comes down to who's your best player, what's the direction of the, I never forget this. Larry Brown, one of the great coaches of all time, obviously won a national championship at Kansas. He has, in different times in his career, and as an NBA head coach, had the best team in the world and literally the worst record in the NBA. He's had both of those things, the same coach. So what does that tell you? Like Bill Self's never going to have the best record in the Big 12 and the worst record in the Big 12. Like it just doesn't work like that. He might have the best or the 4th best, but it's always going to be kind of in that range. In the NBA, any coach, Eric Spoelstra, you name it, they can have the best or the worst, and it comes down to the roster. I think Dusty is as equipped as anybody to be an NBA head coach. His demeanor, his mind, the way he carries himself, the way he communicates, he's going to be great. And here's the great thing for him and why I think it makes it so easy for him to make this decision now. First off, you just won the championship. You would have a shot to repeat, but that's a hard thing to do. You go take a great NBA job in a wonderful city. Dallas is an amazing city. Raise your family. Try to ride this Cooper Flagg thing wherever it goes. If it works out, you're a lifelong NBA coach now. And if it doesn't, whenever you want to come back to college, you can take whatever the best job available is. In fact, you're so good, somebody might fire their coach to move you in. You know the way every offseason for years now, people have daydreamed about, could you get Brad Stevens back? Could you get Billy Donovan back? Dusty May will now be a part of that conversation. He might not ever come back to college, but if he wants to or needs to, that's going to be here whenever he wants it.
That's such a good point. Gary Parrish, CBS Sports, Eye on College Basketball. College basketball never sleeps as long as Gary Parrish and Matt Norlander are talking about it. Gary, you're the best. Thank you so much as always for your time, man. Be well.
All right. I appreciate you guys. Take care.
Gary Parrish joining us here on Big 12 Radio. Eye on College Basketball is a must listen for me, certainly. With James Westling, I'm Ari Temkin. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on Tuned In and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Loyola steps up and he's sacked. Back in their own territory at the 47 by Golday.
Fake it to Kingston and give it instead to Hagan. And he is dropped by Golday.
At home, Golday is right here off the edge. I want you to watch Corleone in the middle. He's the one that starts the disruption. Boom, swims through, makes everybody feel chaotic, and then Golday stays home where he's supposed to be.
Thought about running it. Now is sandwiched out of bounds. Jake Golday. Fake it. They look to see Golday at the end.
Loyola steps up and he's sacked. Back in their own territory at the 47 by Golday. A call by Cincinnati.
Jake Golday's had a nice job off the edge. Dante Corleone pushing the pocket from the middle. Right there.
Bowling Green, Pine didn't see him. Jake Golday pulverizing the quarterback. It's a sack and a loss of 7.
All the way to the right. He's to the right. He's to the left. Nice dive by Jake Golday. Got it.
Along with James Westling, I am Ari Temkin. It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. Great stuff as always from Gary Parrish. I would encourage you to check out the podcast, which includes Gary Parrish talking NBA draft. Gary's great talking all things basketball. Really enjoy him. And, you know, he had a lot to say about the Darren Peterson situation, a lot to say about just the draft picks overall. Thought, you know, not surprised by the Koa Pete pick where he was selected, and thought maybe that he made the wrong decision in terms of, you know, do you, as Gary laid it out, you know, fly private, be the guy at Arizona and, you know, play the majority of minutes, or go on an NBA roster and start to develop there, but play very sparingly and perhaps even play a bunch of time at the G League where you're not flying, private. What say you, James? Did Koa make the wrong decision here?
I mean, right now, I would say yes. And that was fascinating insight from Gary, talking about Tommy Lloyd on the phone with Koa, trying to convince him to spend one more year in Tucson, where sure, he's making $3 million on a rookie contract at where he got selected, but probably would have made that or more potentially at a place like Arizona, where they just got an NIL influx, which kept Tommy Lloyd with that program after North Carolina came calling. So when he started talking about playing in the G League, if he's on a two-way contract and he's on essentially a school bus going from site to site or flying commercial at 6'9", 250 pounds, life at Arizona was pretty good. And what was surprising to me is Koa Pete comes from a family of professional athletes. His dad played professionally in the NFL. His brother is still in the NFL. He's got a mom that was a track and field star. Like, he's got 3 or 4 professional immediate family members surrounding him that I would have assumed know what that is like as a late first-round pick on a two-way contract. So when Gary started talking about the advice that he received or lack thereof, it was really shocking to me, because he's got all the people around him that probably I would have assumed would tell him to come back one more year.
Yeah. I kind of go back and forth on this. Ultimately, it feels like coming back would have been the right move, given next year's draft doesn't appear to be as good and top heavy as this year's draft was. But the other side of that is, some of the question marks around Koa and his outside shooting abilities were not going to be answered, this season at Arizona. And so that had to be part of the equation as well. If he wants to develop an outside game, doing it in a place like going back and forth between the G League and an NBA roster feels like the best spot to do it, because you weren't going to be doing it at Arizona. But there's going to be for sure some, what I would think culture shock for him.
Definitely. And what happened at the NBA Combine or after the season that scared teams away in terms of his shot? Because I felt like he was automatic from 15 feet in. If he extends that with his current shooting motion, I thought he had the potential to be able to knock it down consistently from 18 to 20 feet, which is what he'll work on, sure, in the G League or the NBA. Speaking of a G League two-way guy, did you see Dean Wade got paid a 4-year, $39 million deal with the Philadelphia 76ers? Dean Wade, the former Kansas State Wildcat, who started most of the season for the Cavs at like 5-4, 5 points and 4 or 5 rebounds per game, but does all the little things, is going to be making $39 million.
Bruce Weber lives. Bruce Weber lives.
Hey, in Elite
happy for Dean Wade. It's great to see guys that aren't expected to have NBA careers do this. I think when Dean Wade went down with an injury, I think a lot of us felt like, well, that's kind of it for his basketball career. And he had different plans. Worked his way up from being an undrafted free agent with the Cleveland Cavaliers, became a starter, an impactful player, and one of the best rosters in the Eastern Conference. And 76ers are adding a good one. Kind of disappointing, though, because 76ers have both Kelly Oubre and Joel Embiid. So they were sort of Kansas exclusive. I'm not going to lie.
Well, the Sunflower Sixers with those 3 Kansas. I'm here for it. And today I learned Kelly Oubre is still in the league.
That is James Westling. I am Ari Temkin. All right. Tomorrow is our penultimate consensus. Will it be BYU at 1 or Texas Tech at 2? We will make that decision on the consensus on tomorrow's show. Thanks, as always, to our great producers, Anthony Smith with Big 12 Studios, Taman T-Chains Turner with us here at TuneIn. Thanks to James Westling. I'm Ari Temkin. Big 12 Today is back tomorrow. But for now, we are out. Peace.